So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to. So we are back with a brand new movie on What If Depressed Naruto x Asuna movie, but before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. It was a bright, normal day in Konoha. Team 7 was finishing up their daily training and being taught how to be accomplished ninja. Well actually, Sasuke was being trained how to be a ninja. Sakura was fawning over him and Naruto was, once again, doing chakra control. Alright team, that's enough for today. Meet back here tomorrow at the same time, Kakashi said to his 3 students. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. You bet sensei. See ya around. He yelled in a typical fashion. Kakashi just waved and shushined off to do whatever it is that he does all day. Sakura turned to Sasuke as he began to walk away. Hey Sasuke-kun, would you like to? No, the raven-haired boy said coldly and continued walking. I'll go with you Sakura-chan. Naruto ran over to her happily, only to be hit the head. No way. I'd never go out with a baka like you, get lost, she said harshly, then turned to go stalk, ask Sasuke for a date again. Naruto just watched his teammates go. As soon as they disappeared, the happy grin immediately slipped off his face. Morons. He muttered. Oh well, might as well get ready for work. He shrugged and then headed for his apartment. He arrived a short while later, not even bothering to lick his door. He sighed as headed into his room and opened up his trunk. Damn, I really hate this jumpsuit, he thought sourly as he slid the jacket off. As he did, he also reached into the trunk and pulled out a different set. These clothes were actually a set of standard Anbu pants and armor. He shanged into the pants and slid on the armored vest, exposing his Anbu tattoo on his left arm. Lastly, he pulled out a standard black Anbu cloak and a grinning fox mask. Slipping both on, he headed back out of his apartment discreetly and shushined to the Hokage tower. Sarutobi was have as much normal day as possible, considering the fact that he ran a village full of ninja. He was slightly troubled, however, by the most recent mission assignment that had come in. He stood facing his window, taking a puff on his pipe every now and then as he looked out over his village. Just then he heard a dull knocking at his office door. Who is it? He asked without turning. Sir, it is Fox Taiko, here at your request. His secretary's voice carried into the office. The Sandame nodded. Send him in. He heard his door open and footsteps enter the room. Hokage-sama, Fox reporting as ordered, the Anbu said crisply as he walked into the office. Sarutobi turned and nodded to the shinobi. Thank you for coming so quickly, Naruto, he said with a small smile. The masked shinobi chuckled and pulled off the creepy fox mask. Damn, old man. You want the entire world, you know who I am, he said jovially. They both knew he joking as the Hokage always had his room soundproofed as an extra precaution. Ah, I'll keep that in mind. It's good to see you, lad. The Sandame gave a warm smile. Truthfully, he had been more than skeptical when Naruto had first joined the ranks of Anbu at age 10. He had argued that life as a shinobi, especially in ANBU, was not healthy for a child so young. But the Anbu commander had been adamant in his request for Naruto to join, and likewise Naruto was equally as determined. There was no denying the boy's skill, and eventually the old cage had caved. Life had gone surprisingly well for the young blonde after he entered Anbu. Everyone had welcomed him warmly, as most watched over the boy at some point or another, and accepted him as one of their own. Somehow, probably due to his naturally cheery personality, the effects of being a cold killer hadn't worn off on Naruto. He had kept much of his personality and happiness. Though I wish Kakashi hadn't corrupted him at such a young age. The Sandame mentally grimaced, thinking of Naruto's rather large collection of Icha paradise. Naruto gave a foxy grin. So do you have a mission for me? I doubt you called me here just for a warm meeting, Sarutobi nodded. Correct. We received a rather interesting mission just a few hours ago, the Sandame said, his voice now serious. Naruto automatically switched into professional mode. Who was it from? He asked. The Hokage shrugged. He didn't give a name. He was heavily clothed so we couldn't see his face either. The Hokage didn't sound overly concerned. It wasn't uncommon for a mission client to remain anonymous to protect themselves. Naruto nodded. What rank is it? He asked with mild interest. S rank. It's a long-term mission, at least a few months. The Sandame explained. Naruto hummed thoughtfully. I would need an excuse for leaving Team 7 so suddenly, and you would probably need someone else to watch over Uchiha, he said carefully. Sarutobi nodded. I already have someone picked out. I'm sending you, because this mission is outside the elemental countries. At this Naruto's eyes widened. Outside? I didn't think we took missions outside of the elemental countries? We usually don't, but our client paid a very substantial amount of money. I would be a fool to turn down such an offer. The Sandaime said with a small bit of weariness. Naruto hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Okay. Well, what is the mission then? The old Kage pulled up a scroll with the label, S rank, on the seal. He handed it over to the young Anbu. Assassination. Your target is currently in residence at a boarding school called Mahora Academy in Japan. Apparently she is the heir to a rather prestigious family line. Her name is Kano Kanoka, SP. Be advised that she does have a bodyguard. It's some sort of samurai though, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. The Hokage explained. Naruto scanned over the scroll quickly. His eyes paused at a certain piece of information. What the hell? It says that she isn't even 15 yet, he said in disbelief. Sarutobi nodded grimly. I don't like it either, but like I said, our client is paying us too well for us to turn it down. Naruto scowled slightly but nodded. I don't like it, but I'll do it, of course Hokage-sama. The Hokage nodded in approval. Good. Pack for a long trip and you may leave whenever you feel ready. I want a report every few days. Dismissed. Naruto saluted smartly. Hi Hokage-sama, and with that, he shushined off to his apartment to pack. This is going to be hell, he thought silently. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX train that was filled with girls. Girls wearing rather short school skirts. Needless to say, Naruto's perverted mind was in overdrive. Maybe this mission won't be so bad after all. Naruto would admit he was a pervert. He was nowhere near as perverted as Kakashi or Jiraiya, but he could admit he was one. He believed that all men were, to whatever extent, perverted, and he tried to keep it at a minimum whenever possible. Of course, he still had his precious Icha. Naruto was currently decked out dark jeans and black muscle shirt with a white jacket over it. Many girls had been giving looks and whispering about the strange boy. Naruto took it all in at a simple glance. Half of him was a trained killer that was looking at all possible escape routes and threats, and the other half, was trying not to be distracted by the short schoolgirl uniforms. Next stop, Mahora Academy. Naruto was broken out of his thought by the voice over the loudspeaker. Finally, he thought. The train ground to a halt and the doors slid open. Naruto prepared to take a step out of the train, and was immediately trampled by a horde of girls all racing to get into the school. After a few minutes of laying on the ground in pain, Naruto pulled himself up, grabbed his pack and began to head across the campus. This place is huge, he thought in slight awe as he looked around the giant Mahora campus. Schools, shops, dorms, it could be an entire village. He paused and stared in open awe as he passed the world tree. Damn, we don't have trees that big even back in Fire Country. Naruto managed to calm himself and headed off to the dean's office. Okay, I'm a simple orphan, wanting to find some work around the school. No past, no nothing. He mentally went over his story again. According to the rather detailed information regarding the school, the headmaster of the school was his target's grandfather. Naruto winced slightly. That will make things kinda hard. Oh well, good thing our client actually had a map of this place or I would be screwed. He continued walking until he found a large administration building. Finally, he thought, he suddenly heard footsteps approaching rapidly behind him. Look out! Naruto turned around quickly, only to be sent crashing to the ground. He rubbed his head sorely. Ow! He muttered. Sorry about that, I was in a rush to get to class, Naruto looked up to see what, or rather who had crashed into him. It was a girl around 14 years old. She had dark skin and light blonde hair pulled up into two pigtails. The girl was looking down at Naruto curiously. Are you hurt, Uruka? She asked. Naruto stood up quickly and brushed himself off. Oh, no, I'm fine. Sorry about that. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. He gave a bow and introduced himself. The girls smiled. Kufei. Nice to meet you, Uru, she said happily. Naruto found himself smiling as well. Damn, she's pretty cute, he thought. Well, I should be going now. Don't want to be too late. See ya around. Uru. Kufei yelled as she ran off into the building. Naruto smiled and chuckled to himself. Kufei, interesting, he said simply before entering the building himself. After wandering around for a while, he finally found the office. He walked over to the secretary. Excuse me, he said calmly. The secretary looked up from whatever it was that she was doing. Can I help you, little boy? She asked sweetly. Naruto's eyebrow twitched. Little boy? He was 12 for Kami's sake. And an elite assassin to boot. No way in hell he would be called little boy. He took a deep breath to settle himself down. Calm down, killing her wouldn't give a very good first impression. He tried to reason with himself. He glanced up at the secretary who was still smiling and put on a smile of his own. Yes, actually. I have an appointment with Dean Kano-sama about a job opening. He said evenly. The lady blinked in surprise. A job? My, you are so young too, she said in a disbelieving tone. Naruto held his smile, though it was becoming increasingly hard. Yeah, but I have to make money somehow. Truth be told, it was purely luck that Naruto had found an ad for positions at Mahora Academy. It made his job a whole lot easier and Naruto jumped at the opportunity. Well then I suppose you can go in. Kano-sama doesn't have any other meetings for a while. The lady shrugged. Naruto nodded in thanks and entered the office. There were two people inside. One was a young-looking man with a cigarette, and the other was an old man with a ridiculously large head. Definitely the dean. Dean Kano looked up at the sudden intrusion. Ah, and you are? He asked in a warm voice that reminded Naruto of the Sandame. The blonde Anbu gave a polite bow. I am Uzumaki Naruto Dean-sama. I am here for an appointment about a job offer. The dean nodded. Ah yes, Naruto. Welcome to Mahora Academy. As I'm sure you already know, I'm the headmaster of this academy. This is Takemichi, SP. One of our faculty here at the school. Takemichi nodded in greeting. Now then, you say you would like a job here. You are awfully young, too much so to be a teacher. What can you do? The headmaster inquired. Naruto paused for a moment. Anything you need me to, sir. I can work around the grounds or help with janitorial work. I just wish to have a way to work, he said, hoping that they would buy it. Why choose Mahora, though? Takemichi spoke for the first time. Naruto turned to him and rubbed his head sheepishly. Well, truth be told, I just happened to find an ad for work here and decided to go for it, he said. Takemichi's sweat dropped at his reason. Well, aren't you a little young for a job? What about your parents? The teacher inquired. Naruto adopted a sad expression. I'm an orphan. I'm trying to make some money so I can live on my own since the orphanage kicked me out, he said sadly. Takemichi looked down. Oh, sorry, he said ashamedly. Naruto just smiled. Don't worry about it, he said, cheeriness returning. Dean Kano rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He was staring at Naruto with intensity, making the boy get slightly nervous, though he didn't show it. Tell me, Naruto-kun, can you speak English? He asked finally. Naruto blinked, caught off guard at the question. He had learned English during his training in Anbu. It was required for all Anbu to know at least some of the language for diplomatic reasons. Well enough to hold a conversation, he said finally, not wanting to give away too much. The dean's eyes lit up. Excellent. As it stands, we have an English class that could use an assistant teacher. You can start there, he said firmly. Naruto blinked and Takemichi looked shocked, but didn't say anything. Well, thank you, Dean-sama. I promise to try hard. Just one thing. Naruto ended unsurely. Yes? Why a teacher? Like you said earlier, aren't I a little young to teach students? Naruto questioned. The old headmaster chuckled. Yes, I did, but I am not too concerned with that. Besides, the current teacher there, Negi Springfield, is only 10 years old. Naruto's eyes shot into his hairline. 10? Wow, I guess that solves that problem, Naruto said with shock. The dean nodded. Good, it's settled then. You are to provide assistance to Negi Springfield in Class 2A. Good luck to you. The dean finished with a voice of authority. Naruto nodded but then hesitated. Sir, what about living arrangements? The old dean just waved him off. Don't worry about that. There are plenty of empty dorms around campus. I'll have my secretary arrange a place for you to stay, he explained. Naruto smiled and bowed. Thank you. I promise to try my best, the headmaster chuckled. I'm sure you will. Now then, Shizuna-san here will show you to your new class. The man indicated behind Naruto. The ninja turned and jumped slightly at the lady that had somehow snuck up behind him. What the hell? I didn't even notice her. I'm going to have to concentrate harder. Naruto mentally scolded himself. Shizuna smiled down at the boy. Hello there, Naruto-san. If you would come with me. She gestured out into the hallway. Naruto nodded and gave the dean one last bow before following the woman. The minute he had left, Takemichi turned to the dean. Why did you make him an assistant teacher, especially to Negi's class? He asked in disbelief. The old man stroked his beard thoughtfully. Surely you felt the power within Naruto-kun. I can't quite identify it, but feels extremely strong, he said. Takemichi nodded in confirmation. Do you think he is a mage? If so, a friend or foe? He asked seriously. The dean went silent for a moment. If Naruto is an ally, then he could greatly help us. Recent events have forced us to be on guard, especially with the Kyoto incident over the break. Naruto could prove to be a valuable ally indeed. And if he is a foe? Takemichi asked. If he is an enemy, I have no doubt in you or Negi's abilities to prevent an incident. The dean finished. Takemichi sighed and accepted the explanation. There wasn't much else to do except watch and see how Uzumaki would behave. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto gave her a thankful look. Thank you. Well, I suppose this is it, he said. Shizuna suddenly paused. Oh, I'll have a class roll for you by tomorrow, Naruto-san. Good luck, she said cheerfully. Naruto nodded and breathed in. He grabbed the doorknob and slowly opened the door. As he entered, all eyes turned towards him. There was a total of 31 girls in the class from the looks of it. There was a young-looking kid with red hair tied up in a ponytail standing at the teacher's desk. He looked up and smiled as he saw Shizuna enter behind Naruto. Ah, Shizuna-san. What can I do for you? The boy asked. Shizuna smiled at him warmly. Hello Negi-kun. I'd like to introduce you to your new assistant, Uzumaki Naruto. She stepped aside, letting Naruto walk up to the desk. Negi smiled and held out his hand. Nice to meet you Naruto-san. I'm Negi Springfield, welcome to Class 2A, he said. Naruto smiled and shook the boy teacher's hand. The pleasure is mine, Negi-san. I'm looking forward to working with you. He had a gin plastered on his face. Shizuna turned to leave. Well then. If you have everything under control here, I must return to Dean Kano. Call me if you need anything Naruto-san. Bye Negi-kun. With that, the woman left. Negi turned back to the class that was quietly waiting. Well class, meet Uzumaki Naruto, your new assistant teacher, he said simply. Naruto stepped towards the class. Hello, girls. I hope to have a great year and look forward to meeting all of you, he said with his famous fox grin. The girls were quiet for a moment. Negi's sweat dropped and took a step back. He knew that silence all too well and wanted no part in the carnage. Sure enough, a second later the girls suddenly rushed Naruto, glomping him and bombarding him with questions. How old are you? Where did you come from? Do you have a girlfriend? The poor boy tried to keep up with all the questions thrown at, but was failing miserably. Negi chuckled and decided to intervene. Okay girls, you can harass him later, please return to your seats, he said calmly, to which the girls grudgingly obliged. Naruto threw the child mage a thankful grin. Now then Naruto-san, I was just about to take attendance. Please feel free to watch for now until any problems arise. Negi said. Naruto nodded, grabbed a stool and leaned up against the chalkboard. All right then. Kazumi Asakura, here, Miyazaki Nodoka. H here. As Negi took attendance, Naruto looked around at the strange group of girls. One in the back was juggling pencils, another was polishing a rather dangerous-looking gun and one kept on staring at Negi and blushing. Naruto paused as he saw a familiar face in the crowd. Kufei-san. He thought as he looked at the girls. Kufei had apparently recognized him too, because she was staring at him while Negi was talking. Seeing Naruto look at her, the girl smiled cheerfully and waved. Naruto smiled and gave a small wave in return. This got a few of the girls looking at the two strangely. You two know each other Naruto-san? Negi paused and asked. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Well, sorta. He said simply. One of the girls near the middle called out. Hey Kufei, why didn't you tell us that the cute new teacher was your boyfriend? She said loudly, causing both Naruto and Kufei to turn red. It's not like that. The blonde-haired girls shouted, waving her hands around frantically. A few of the girls sniggered. Negi cleared his throat. If I may continue, Sakurazaki Setsuna, here, Kano Kanoka. Here. The reply came happily. Naruto instantly perked up, searching for a face. Finally he came to rest on Kanoka. My target. Naruto's thoughts instantly became deadly. At least I have a face to go by now instead of just a description. Intel is always worse than it's supposed to be. Negi finished up roll and launched into the lesson. Naruto sat back on his stool and sighed. This was going to take some getting used to. After what seemed like forever, the class ended. Negi turned to Naruto as the students began to file out. Well, how was your first day? He asked as he gathered up some papers. Naruto sighed heavily. Boring as hell. But I am just here to assist you. You're the real teacher, he said and folded his hands behind his head lazily. Negi chuckled. Yes, don't worry though, there will be plenty of work later on in the semester. Now then I must be going. Negi waved goodbye to the blonde assistant and headed off to wherever. Naruto stood alone in the classroom. He glanced around before walking out slowly. And now my mission officially begin. Naruto strode calmly down the sidewalk on the far side of campus. The classes had ended for the day and students were hurrying around to various after-school activities or whatever they did. It had been a week since Naruto had first arrived at Mahora Academy. It had been rather uneventful. Wake up, help Negi out with various assignments, do it all over the next day. Truth be told, Naruto was beginning to get very impatient with it all. I haven't even been able to get any more information on Kano, he thought sourly. He waved cheerfully to a couple of passing students, with a smile on his face, but inside he was scowling. Every time I even look at Kanoka, the damn samurai gives me a look. Naruto had come to the conclusion that Setsuna had to be Kanoka's swordsman bodyguard. Why? Well, maybe it was the giant freaking katana she carried around with her. Naruto briefly wondered if anyone actually ever thought why there was a sword-wielding student, but with all the weird things that Naruto had seen so far, he supposed it didn't really matter. Naruto decided to head to the World Tree, as he had come to learn its name. As he walked, his thoughts drifted back to the young swordsman and his problem. He could easily take her out, but that would arouse suspicion. Naruto was new to the academy, and if a student were to disappear, eyes would likely turn towards him. Sure, he was a minor, but he wanted to keep as low a profile as possible. Ultimately, even if Naruto was discovered, he could simply fight his way through, but that would eventually draw attention to the elemental countries and Konoha. Above all else, Naruto wanted to keep Konoha hidden from the danger. Besides, there was something off about the class he was in. Naruto's carefully honed Anbu senses went crazy whenever he was around some of the students. And Negi. Naruto narrowed his eyes. There was something odd about the young teacher. First and foremost being the fact that a 10-year-old was a teacher. Then again, he shrugged, he didn't have room to talk. An Anbu since age 10. But still Negi was hiding something. Naruto noticed how he interacted with some of the girls, more than simply teacher and student. There was something going on and Naruto's danger senses went off every time he saw them. Naruto thought for a moment. Nadoka-san, Asuna-san, Yu-san, Kaide-san, Kufei-san, Kanoka-san, Setsuna-san. Those girls seem to be involved with Negi in some way. I suppose it doesn't matter all that much, but it may be a possible threat in the future. The young blonde thought. As he rounded the corner of a building, the World Tree came into full view. Damn, I still can't believe how big this thing is, he thought while staring at the tree. His ears perked up as a sound reached his ears. There was the sound of two people breathing hard and flesh hitting flesh. Naruto walked further down the sidewalk until he saw the reason for the noise. Negi and Kufei, he thought. Indeed, the two were underneath the giant tree doing what appeared to be practicing martial arts. Naruto's senses tensed a slight bit. Years in Anbu had caused Naruto to be automatically cautious of any form of attack, even when not directed at him. Naruto watched as Negi unleashed a flurry of punches at Kufei, only for the girl to jump back and block. The girl followed up by lunging to the left and driving her elbow at the red-haired teacher. Negi brought up his arms and blocked, only to be knocked down when Kufei used her momentum to sweep her leg into Negi's. She is quite good, Naruto thought, watching the girl move. They both paused for a moment, panting. Then Negi got back up and they both relaxed. You are getting better, Negi Bozu, Kufei said happily. Negi nodded, smiling between pants. Yes, but not nearly as good as you are. How did you get so good at this, Kufei-sensei? Asked. Kufei smiled and opened her mouth to answer but was promptly cut off. From years of practice, I would imagine, Naruto said, finally making himself known. Negi and Kufei spun around. Oh, Naruto-san, I didn't see you there, what are you doing here? Negi asked in a startled voice. Naruto yawned lazily. Oh, not much. I was just walking around when I saw you two sparring. I never imagined you as the combatant type, Negi. Why the martial arts? He asked casually. Negi began to sweat slightly. Well, no reason actually. It is just for a contest that I'm doing with some of the students in a few days, he said nervously. Kufei sighed. Negi Bozu really sucks at lying, she thought. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He could tell when someone was lying, and Negi certainly was. Negi squirmed under his gaze. It really isn't any of my business, but Negi does seem to associate with Konoka a lot, so getting involved here might. Naruto thought it over in his head. Well, you have a lot of practicing to do if it is in a few days, he said finally. Negi gave a silent sigh of relief and then raised an eyebrow. Really? I thought I was coming along rather nicely, he said. Naruto chuckled. Well, you have a lot of the basics down, which is a good thing. I don't recognize that style, but you have a very sloppy stance and your punches leave you too open, he said with practiced ease. Negi blinked, and Kufei's eyebrows shot up. You know martial arts, Naruto-sensei, She asked in slight disbelief. Naruto nodded. I do. I am quite proficient in unarmed combat actually, he said. An odd gleam entered the dark-skinned girl's eyes. Of all the people that she had fought at Mahora, none of them could compete with her and frankly, she wished for a challenge. Nay, how's about a spar then sensei, she said. Naruto blinked. He really didn't want to give himself away, but... Okay sure. He said with a shrug. Negi sighed and moved to sit on the railing of the sidewalk. I'm going to take a quick breather then. Good luck Naruto-san, but be careful. Kufei-sensei has a mean kick. He warned, rubbing his leg. Naruto smiled back at him before turning back to the waiting Kufei. Well, you ready? He asked, slipping into a taijutsu stance. The girl raised an eyebrow at his stance but slid into the Pakuajong stance. You bet, she yelled excitedly. Naruto smirked and then disappeared suddenly. Kufei's eyes widened briefly before she sprung into action. She barely managed to twist away before Naruto's fist zoomed by her head. She quickly brought her arms up and blocked as Naruto appeared in front of her, launching a barrage of punches. He hits pretty hard, Kufei thought as the punches impacted with her arms. Quickly she twisted her body around and followed up with a lightning fast punch aimed for his face. Her eyes widened slightly when Naruto caught her fist. He caught her wrist and swung her around to knock her off balance. Kufei was barely able to recover before Naruto launched into another swarm of punches. Both combatants jumped apart and stood there panting. You were pretty good, Kufei complimented. Naruto smiled. Why thank you. You aren't too bad yourself. Want to continue? He asked with a playful smirk. Kufei adopted a similar one. Bring it. Negi sighed as he leaned against the railing. This was going to take a while. 2 hours later Naruto and Kufei stood opposite of each other, breathing heavily. Both looked worse for wear, though Kufei more so than Naruto. Wow, Naruto-sensei. It has been a long time since I had that much fun, Kufei said happily. Naruto returned the smile. Yeah, it was fun. I haven't had a decent sparring partner in ages. He turned to where Negi was resting and then sweat dropped when he saw that the boy was asleep. Negi. Wake the hell up. Naruto screamed at the red-haired teacher. Negi shot up with a startled yelp. After getting his bearings he began to apologize. I'm terribly sorry. Please forgive me. He blubbered sheepishly. Kufei snickered and Naruto just rolled his eyes. Chill out, dude. We did get a little carried away, he said. Kufei nodded in agreement. Yeah, sorry Negi Bozu. I guess we will have to continue our lesson another time, She smiled apologetically. Negi gave a weak smile. Don't worry sensei. We still have some time, he said. Once again Naruto was wondering what exactly Negi was planning. He shrugged. Well, whatever. I'll see you guys back. Hey, Negi-sensei. Naruto was cut off by a loud shout. All three turned to see Asuna, Kanoka, Setsuna, Nodoka, Kaide and Yu walking towards them. Naruto smiled cheerily. Hello girls. He said. Asuna frowned slightly as they walked up. Naruto-sensei. What are you doing here? She asked. Kanoka elbowed her in the ribs. Don't be rude Asuna, she said sternly. Naruto laughed. Don't worry about it. I was just having a little spar with Kufei here, he said. Kaide raised an eyebrow. Really? I hope you didn't get hurt too bad, Digazaru, she asked. Kufei gave a weak smile. Actually, Naruto-sensei here beat me, The girls stared at Naruto wide-eyed. Naruto shifted uncomfortably under their gazes. How the hell did you do that? Asuna asked loudly. Kufei is like, the best martial artist at this school. Naruto shrugged. I just practice. A lot, he said modestly. Asuna snorted in disbelief. It was then that Nodoka spoke up. Actually, we were wondering if you guy wanted to join us for some lunch, she said timidly. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. He knew that Nodoka was a shy girl, but damn. It was like talking to Hinata. Negi smiled. Of course, girls. We would be happy to, he said. Kufei shrugged. Sure, Naruto saw them all looking at him expectantly. He sighed. Yeah, okay sure, he said. Kanoka cheered and grabbed hold of his arm, dragging the blonde off. Come on Naruto-sensei. I know the best place to eat, she said, all joy. Asuna and the others trailed after her. They ended up at a small Chinese restaurant near the academy, still technically on the school grounds. Naruto was amazed at how extensive the campus was. It was more like a small city than an academy. Naruto glanced around the eatery as they walked in. The smell of cooked rice and meat hit him like a wave. There were others around, seated at the bar and other tables, enjoying rather delicious-looking meals. Nice place, he said offhandedly. Kanoka beamed at him. Told you so. She smiled. Naruto couldn't help but give a small smile at the girl's cheer. It was quickly gone, however. She is the target. Never get emotionally involved with the target, he reminded himself. They all picked a table and sat around, choosing what to eat. Then another familiar face walked over to their table. Hey, guys. What can I get you? Chao asked happily. Naruto cocked his head curiously. You work here, Chao-san? He asked. She nodded. Yep. Well, actually I own the place, she explained, still smiling. Naruto was mildly surprised, but waved it off. They all placed their orders. As she was about to head back, Chao turned to Ku-fei. Hey, Ku. Think you can help me cook some more meat buns real quick? She asked. Ku-fei nodded. Sure, she agreed and got up, following Chao to the kitchen. The girl stopped and turned back to the group, smiling sheepishly. Sorry, I won't be long, she said, and disappeared behind the door. Naruto turned his attention to the girls and Negi, who were chatting away. So, Ku-fei works here too? He inquired. Kaide nodded. That's right. She, Chao and Satsuki all work here after school, Digazaru. Asuna gave a wry smile. Why do you care, Naruto-sensei? Taken an interest to Ku-fei? She asked teasingly, leaning closer. Naruto turned slightly red, but shook his head. No, I was just curious, he said quickly, maybe a little too quickly. Time for a subject change. Thankfully Negi jumped in to save him. So, Naruto-san, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, he said. Asuna nodded. Yeah, it's not every day we just get 2 teachers younger than us, she said. The girls nodded. Naruto hesitated for a moment. Sure. What would you like to know? He asked. Well, how did you get to be a teacher at Mahora? You asked. Having young teachers is almost unheard of. Naruto shrugged. Actually, I just showed up at Mahora looking for any work. To be honest, I had expected janitorial work or something. Old man Kano just asked me if I could speak English and stuck me with you. He explained. Everyone stared at him, slightly shocked. So, you just randomly got a teaching job? You asked incredulously. Naruto cocked his head. Well, technically I'm just a teaching assistant. I guess Kano just saw potential in me. After all, I am awesome. He finished with a big grin. Asuna just groaned while Kanoka and Nodoka giggled. You nodded, clearly ignoring the last comment. Okay. I have a question. Where do you come from? Those whisker marks on your face are pretty abnormal, she pointed out. The others nodded. Naruto frowned slightly. Well, I'm not from Japan. All I can say is that it is pretty far south, he said. Everyone looked up as Ku-fei returned, carrying a tray of food with her. Sorry about that, She grinned sheepishly. She grabbed a seat next to Naruto, and they all began to dig in as they conversed. A few questions were raised as to how Naruto got to Japan or where he got money from, to which Naruto answered guardedly. Kaide raised a finger. But wait, aren't you a little young to be off on your own around here, Digazaru? She asked. Nodoka nodded. Why, yeah, sensei. Do your parents let you wander around by yourself? She asked. Silence filled the table as they stared at Naruto. The smile was gone from his face and replaced with a small frown. No, not really, he began, his voice now subdued. I don't actually have any parents. I never knew them. The girls and Negi all looked down shamefully. Nodoka spoke quietly. I'm sorry, sensei. I didn't know. Negi nodded. He sort of knew how that was, never really seeing his parents. All he ever had was his Nei-chan. It's okay. I got over it a long time ago, Naruto said, trying to cheer up the now somber atmosphere. Suddenly Kanoka stood up and engulfed Naruto in a hug, sobbing and nearly knocking Ku-fei out of her chair. Wah. That's terrible, never knowing your parents. You must be lonely. I'm sorry, Naruto-sensei, I'll make it all better. She cried, unaware that she was choking the poor blonde. Asuna couldn't help but snicker quietly. Naruto just sat limply in the girl's arms, unsure how to react. On the one hand, he never had wanted pity from anyone. On the other, nobody besides the Hokage had ever cared that much about him. It's okay, Kanoka-san. I'm fine, really, he said, trying to calm the girl. I have always been alone and I'm used to it. I don't want anyone's pity. I've never needed anyone's help, he said with a small frown. Kanoka released him and gave him a warm smile. Nay, sensei. It's okay to rely on others once in a while, she said. Naruto could only stare at her in confusion. Asuna nodded. Yeah, teach, you're part of the family now, she said with a smile. Naruto looked around at the others in surprise. They all nodded. Of course. Negi said. Kufei punched him in the arm lightly. We are there for you, Uru. Naruto took a moment to remember how to speak. Thanks everyone. I am not really sure what to say, he managed. Asuna snorted. Then shut up and eat. Everyone laughed, the good mood seeming to affect even the air around them. Naruto looked at the faces of his students and partner and was filled with a strange warm feeling of acceptance. The group talked and ate for a while, joking with each other and getting to know Naruto better. Naruto glanced back at Kanoka. Thank you, Kanoka-san, he said softly. She gave him an odd look for a moment then smiled brightly. No problem, sensei. Naruto stared at the girl's warm smile. She really was a nice girl. A cold feeling of dread rushed through him suddenly, making the boy unable to meet Kanoka's eyes. Never get involved with your target. The words came back to him. No matter what happened, Kanoka was still his target. She would be dead. No matter how Naruto felt about it. The pleasant mood of the evening was ruined and Naruto quickly stood up. Well guys, it has been fun. I have to get ready for my second day. Good night all. He said, trying to get away as quickly as possible. He got to the exit when Kanoka called to him. Naruto-sensei, wait a sec. The boy cringed mentally and turned around. Kanoka ran up to him and gave him another hug. Remember, sensei. You can rely on others to help you out, she said softly. Naruto could barely stand the feeling inside of him as Kanoka left back to the group, giving a final wave goodbye. He rushed back across campus quickly, trying to block out his conscience. He had killed plenty of people in the past, with cold brutal efficiency, but somehow. And that concludes today's lesson. Naruto said formally. Class 3A stood and bowed in response and began filing out of the room, chatting happily about various things. Naruto sighed and walked back over to his small desk to gather his things. Negi had asked him to take over the class for the day while he was away. Doing what? Naruto had no clue. But Embo had a small idea of what it could be. He noticed that Asuna and her group were very anxious to leave. And today? What was it? Naruto frowned. Negi had said he was having a small contest with some students today. Naruto watched as the last student left the classroom. There was definitely something going on, and Naruto would be damned if he was left in the dark. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX she was one of the closest to Negi. Naruto slipped into a normal gait and walked quickly across the courtyard to the dormitories. He rounded another corner, then ducked back around quickly. Asuna was standing around with Setsuna and Kanoka, talking quickly. Naruto peeped he head back around the corner and, upon seeing his targets, crouched down into the bushes. He was too far away to hear them properly. Glad Kakashi taught me this. Naruto muttered, pumping a small amount of chakra into his ears. Instantly a new myriad of sounds entered his ears. Laughter from a nearby group, the birds in the trees overhead and, most importantly, the conversation of his students. Said that he wanted to rest up before the fight tonight. He heard Asuna say. He has been practicing pretty hard, but Negi is still a kid after all. Naruto frowned. Fight? Kanoka nodded sympathetically. Poor Negi-kun works so hard these days. I wish Evangeline-san had made up some other sort of test for him, she said. At this, Naruto raised an eyebrow and pumped a little more chakra into his ears to make sure he heard right. Evangeline. He thought. How does she tie in with this lot? By Naruto's examination, Evangeline didn't hang around with Asuna or Negi. In fact, quite the opposite. She seemed to actively try to avoid Negi and his friends as much as possible, only being seen with Chachimaru. Sure, Naruto found that to be a little odd, but then he found the young girl to be generally strange. Suddenly Setsuna perked up and turned to where Naruto was hiding, a small frown on her face. Kuso. Naruto swore and slipped back around the corner of the building. Somehow the girl had sensed his chakra. Most low-level shinobi couldn't sense his chakra, so how could this girl, this Samuri, sense him? There is more to Setsuna-san than meets the eye, Naruto thought darkly. Then Asuna started talking again. Naruto struggled to hear, deciding that getting closer with Setsuna around would be a bad thing. Well anyway, it's going down tonight in front of the World Tree, so be sure to show up and give Negi some support. The boisterous girl said. Both Kanoka and Setsuna nodded. Sure. Of course. Naruto allowed himself a small grin of triumph. Tonight it was. Naruto-sensei. A voice behind Naruto made him start suddenly. He whirled around to find Ku-fei giving him an odd look. What you doing, Uru? She asked. Naruto chuckled sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head. I was just. Ah. He glanced around the corner quickly and saw that the three girls had left. I was admiring these bushes, he answered lamely. Mentally he smacked himself. Who would be dumb enough to fall for that? Ah, okay. Kufei said, smiling. Naruto stared hard at her. Seriously? Ah, okay then. I have to go prepare tomorrow's lesson, said Naruto, turning to leave quickly. He was stopped suddenly when Kufei spoke again. Hey, Naruto-sensei, she began, looking slightly embarrassed. I was wondering, you want to have another spar? She asked. Naruto hesitated. Ah, what the heck? I have time to kill, he thought. Sure. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Naruto and Kufei walked into the small Chinese diner, both panting and looking quite exhausted. Kufei nodded to Satsuki at the counter and then joined Naruto at the bar. Another fun spar. Naruto-sensei. The dark-skinned girl asked with a tired smile. Naruto returned the smile and nodded. Yes, I enjoy the practice, he said, panting some. Satsuki brought out drinks for the both of them. On the house, the girl said with a sweet smile before returning to her work. Naruto gave her a thankful nod and began sipping on his drink. He and Kufei sat in silence for a minute, both simply enjoying their drinks. Finally Naruto broke the silence. Nay Kufei-san, I've been wondering, he started. You are quite good at martial arts. I was just wondering how you got so good. Kufei blushed slightly at the praise. Oh, my family is good at fighting, I was trained at a young age. My whole life has been really centered around it, she explained. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Maybe you should extend some of that focus to your grades, he said. Kufei chuckled sheepishly, a light blush appearing on her face. She really does remind me of the old me, Naruto thought as he watched the girl. And she's cute too. Kyuubi, strangely enough, piped in. Naruto mentally sighed. Did the stupid fox always had to butt into things? A faint chuckling was his only answer. Hey Kufei. A shout made both Kufei and Naruto turn. Maki waved from the stand entrance. Asakura trailed in behind her. Kufei waved back. What you guys doing here, Kufei asked as the girls sat down next to them. It was Asakura who answered. Ah well, Maki was looking for you. I just decided to tag along. You two never seemed like the types to hang out together, so I was curious, she said nonchalantly. Looking for me, she asked confused. Maki nodded frantically. Yeah. It's getting late and Negi has his FA contest tonight. The girl stopped herself and glanced over at Naruto. The boy frowned at the quick change but said nothing. Kufei blinked. It's already time. She glanced outside. Sure enough, the sun was setting over the buildings, its last rays peeking through. Ah, sorry. Let's go. She shouted, standing quickly. Then she stopped and turned to Naruto. Thanks for the spar, sensei. It was fun, she said with a smile. Naruto couldn't help but smile back. No problem, Kufei-san. I enjoyed it. Haruna stroked her chin thoughtfully, a mischievous smirk creeping onto her face. Well, Kufei. Were you on a date or something? She asked. Both Naruto and Kufei turned slightly red. No. They both yelled in unison. It was just a friendly spar is all. That's it, Naruto said. Besides, I could not possibly date a student. It's against policy, he said with a frown. Kufei nodded quickly, though deep down a part of her felt disappointed. She shrugged the feeling off and grabbed Maki by the arm, pulling her towards the exit. Okay, we gotta go. See ya sensei. She called back. Maki waved too, though didn't say anything. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the two girls but waved it off. So whatever is happening will start soon. Meh, I will leave soon enough. But first. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a small orange book. His personal copy of Icha Paradise, Issue 4. Naruto chuckled and began to read, a small blush on his face. Asakura leaned over to see. What's that sensei? She asked curiously. Naruto glanced at her. Ah, nothing you would be interested in, Haruun-san. It's not really for young audiences, he said. The red-haired girl snorted and grabbed the book out of Naruto's hands. Oh please. You're even younger than me. Just because you are a teacher doesn't mean you're more mature than I am, she said and glanced down at the page. She instantly flew back, blood jetting from her nose. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Hey master, I can't see from here. Can you move me to a better spot? The small doll Chachizero asked as the three waited in front of the world tree. Evangeline frowned but ignored her, She tapped her foot impatiently. That brat was late. Chachimaru, she said suddenly, I want you to go full out tonight. Chachimaru tilted her head slightly, almost in confusion. Master, the likelihood of Negi-sensei even landing a hit on me is less than 3%. I don't care. I'm not exactly looking for an apprentice and that boy is lucky I am even giving him a chance. Go all out on him. Evangeline snapped. Chachimaru stared at her for a moment with an unreadable expression, then nodded. Yes, master. A little ways away, Naruto was crouched against a wall, covered by a small invisibility jutsu. He had left the stand shortly after Kufei and Meiki. Of course, being a shinobi, he had beat the two of them there. Apprentice. He thought, staring hard at Evangeline. What the hell is this? Evangeline-san. A shout caused Naruto and the Evangeline group to turn. Negi stood proudly at the steps to the tree. I'm here for my apprenticeship test, he said, hard confidence laced in his voice. Naruto sighed and leaned against the wall. Looks like the show was about to start. Evangeline stared at Negi for a moment, then let out a dark chuckle. So you showed up after all, boya. She smirked. Alright, let's get started. If you can land one hit on Chachimaru using your kung fu, then you pass. The match continues until you are dead or can't continue fighting anymore. The girl explained. Naruto gaped. Dead? Just what the hell were these kids doing? Negi didn't seem at all daunted and nodded. Evangeline turned and glared past Negi. And can you do something about the audience? She barked angrily. For a brief moment Naruto thought she had noticed him, but then realized she was referring to the students who had shown up with Negi. Sorry, they kinda followed me, Negi said sheepishly. Naruto frowned and scanned the faces. There are Meiki-san and Kufei. Asuna-san, Setsuna and even Kono the target. Naruto corrected himself, a sick feeling entering him when he looked at the smiling girl. He was trying his best to distance himself from the girl. He would not fail because of simple personal emotions. That was a rookie's mistake. No his. Naruto's frown deepened and he forced himself to glance at the other students there. Ako-san, Akira-san and Yuna-san. He thought as he saw the last three students there. How big is this thing? More and more students seemed to be involved. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted by cheers from the group as Negi stepped up to Chachimaru. He gave a bow. Chachimaru is pretty strong from what I've heard, Kufei said as the students watched. Negi will be at a disadvantage if he drags this out, Uru. From his hiding place, Naruto studied Chachimaru. The girl was rather slim, and didn't seem at all to be the fighting type. He glanced back at the students. Most of them were cheering, but Naruto noticed the concerned frown on Asuan's face. For all the arguing they do. Ah, young love. Kyuubi spoke up from inside the seal. Naruto mentally snorted. I doubt that. Half the time it looked like Asuna wants to pummel Negi into the ground. Ah, but she never does. She seems to be pretty protective of the brat. I suppose. Hey Kyuubi. Yes. Why the hell am I even talking to you? Naruto didn't wait for an answer and returned attention to the match, just as Evangeline shouted, begin. Immediately Chachimaru launched herself at Negi, a neutral expression never leaving her face. Negi whipped his arms up and began shouting. I invoke the contract for 90 seconds, Negi Springfield. Then Chachimaru was on him, fist swinging. Negi spun around her fist and swung at his opponent in the same move. Just as quickly Chachimaru brought up her arm and blocked the hit. Akira, Ako and Yuna stared at the two in awe. Kufei frowned. Close. She muttered. Negi and Chachimaru exchanged a few blows, neither with much success. The speed in which they moved made Naruto bite his lip in curiosity. No normal human should be able to move that fast, not without chakra. Interesting. Evangeline said from the side, her expression containing mild boredom. A self-made technique. He's using his magic to make him faster. In the shadows, Naruto nearly tripped. Did she just say, magic? He stared hard at her and then at Negi. Magic? Did such a thing exist? Of course. Many types of power exist in this world. Magic, chakra, kai. All similar yet different. Kyuubi spoke up, helpful for once. Naruto looked away from the match. Magic. This is big. Does anyone in the elemental nations know about magic? He asked Kyuubi. Doubtful. It was long ago that the branches of power separated. The elemental nations, Mundo Verus and Mundo Magica are all separate for a reason. Mundo wa? Naruto asked in confusion. Kyuubi sighed. The world of magic. There is a separate world, much like the elemental nations. The magical world. Most people in this world are unaware of its, or the elemental nations, existence. Naruto went silent for a moment. How do you know all this? He said finally. Kyuubi snorted. I'm an age-old demon. I've traveled this world long enough to know most of its secrets. Naruto didn't respond and turned back to the match. He would need to report to the Hokage on this soon. This could change the mission drastically. Naruto watched as Negi feinted a kick and then jumped inside Chochimaru's guard. Everyone stared intently. It seemed that he would actually hit the girl. But then Chochimaru did something completely unexpected and cartwheeled over Negi's shoulder. Naruto blinked a few times to make sure he had seen right. Was everyone at this school different? Least now I can figure why that client paid so well. Negi collapsed from the last move, laying still. Give up, boya. Evangeline said. It's over. Go get cleaned up and help yourself. Suddenly Negi started to rise, chuckling. I'm not dead yet, he said, raising his hands into fists. Those were the rules, right? Until I'm dead? Naruto smiled at the boy, a hint of pride touching him. That kid just didn't give up. Evangeline gaped at the red-haired boy. Are you seriously going to continue fighting in that state? Negi-sensei? Chochimaru asked uncertainly. Negi didn't answer, but instead launched himself at Chochimaru with a cry. For the next hour the two fought. Never once did they stop or rest. Negi took the worst of it and had a new collection of bruises and cuts while Chochimaru didn't even have a scratch. Negi winced a few times at some of the more painful-looking hits. He can't win, Kufei said from the watching group. He is tiring out. All the girls watched in concern and horror as Chochimaru relentlessly beat on the child teacher. That's it, Asuna said finally, taking a step forward. I'm ending this now. No, Asuna, don't. Naruto watched as Maki jumped in front of the girls suddenly. He tilted his head curiously as Maki went into a long speech about Negi being mature and basically being an adult. How touching. The blonde thought dryly. He turned and perked up. Chochimaru had looked back at Maki, distracted by her speech. She didn't see Negi's fists beating right for her. Clang. Chochimaru had looked of shock on her face at the hit. Evangeline had an even bigger one. You have got to be kidding. The girl said, gaping. A look of joy erupted on all the 3A girls' faces. He did it. Maki yelled happily. Negi smiled and then promptly collapsed. All right, Negi. Damn it, Chochimaru. Naruto smirked and stood from his hiding place, the invisibility jutsu still cast. The little guy had actually done it. Not bad, Neg. Naruto saw Negi blink and opened his eyes. He was surrounded by Maki, Asuna and that ermine that Negi always seemed to carry around. Naruto turned to leave. Seemed the event was over. You won, boy. Naruto turned back suddenly. Evangeline was turning to leave. You can come train at my cottage whenever you feel like it, she said flatly. You should keep practicing that kung fu though. Always helps to have a little physical prowess. And then she left without another word, Chochimaru trailing behind her. The others gathered around to congratulate Negi. Naruto slipped off while nobody was looking. He began walking back to his own room just as the dawn light began to seep through the clouds. That was interesting, he thought sullenly. I got my answer, but damn, a whole new bunch just appeared. Naruto stopped and stared back the way he had come and dismissed the jutsu. One thing is certain, Hokage-sama needs to know about this. Hokage-sama, I have successfully infiltrated Mahora Academy and made contact with target Kanoka. However, as well as failing to find an appropriate time to strike, I have come across some startling information. A few of the people of this school, and apparently a wide range of people in the outside world, have the ability to use magic, like we use chakra. This knowledge has made things much more cautious and I request orders to proceed in light of this. Should this mission continue? Fox Naruto reread his letter once more before he was satisfied. It had been another day since he had spied on the fight between Negi and Chochimaru. He had observed all the students carefully that next day, unsure of who exactly was in on this. Obviously Asuna, Kanoka and their group. He was pretty sure that Nodoka and Kufei were new to the whole idea. And as for the others he had seen, Yuna, Maki, Akira and Akko, they seemed to have just been there. He truly needed to gather more intel on the nature of this new power before even considering his mission. In the back of his mind, Naruto almost hoped that the Sandaime would call off the mission. But sadly, Naruto knew that it probably would not be the case. Despite the recent prosperity in the Hidden Leaf, it was still in a state of economic instability. Even this many years after the Kyuubi attack and the coffers were still trying to rebuild. This, if the price was true, would greatly boost the economy back up to great heights. Naruto mentally scolded himself for being selfish. He was a shinobi of the leaf, and his mission could greatly help his village. He shouldn't even be thinking about what he wanted. This is turning out to be more than a simple assassination, he thought idly. Assassination. Naruto had been on plenty of assassination missions and killed more than his share of people with cold efficiency. But somehow the word brought a cold feeling to him now. This was the bitter reality of it. Naruto didn't want to kill Konoha, not one bit. The girl who always smiled at him and showed open kindness. But those were his orders. Naruto served Konoha and the Hokage. More than that, he was Anbu. The elite, completely devoted to the Hokage. If he was ordered to kill, then that was the way it was. And yet, Naruto frowned sourly as he folded the letter and stashed it in his desk drawer. His room was small and yet comfy, in the far end of the dormitories, completely private. Naruto began to get ready for bed when a thought struck him. Why did he serve Konoha? It was an odd question, one Naruto had never considered. For as long as he could remember, he had wanted to be a ninja of Konoha. He saw the way they did cool jutsu and jumped from rooftop to rooftop and took an immediate liking. It was his dream to one day be Hokage and make the village respect him. See him as more than the demon boy. Kit, let's face it, they will never stop seeing you as me. Kyuubi spoke up, in a not unkind tone. Naruto stopped and then slowly sighed. I know, Kyuubi. I try not to lose hope. But it's so hard. Besides, what other reason do I have to serve as a shinobi than to protect the people of my village? Images flashed through his mind, the Sandame smiling warmly at him. Kakashi reading Icha Icha Paradise during their training bouts. Old man Ichiraku and Ayame. My precious people, he thought. I fight for them. I kill for them. I would always try to make the village safe for them. He decided, an air of finality settling inside him. He undressed and crawled into his bed, switching off the lights and entering complete darkness. Despite how I feel about this. If it was a choice between Konoha or my friends, I would choose them. I'm sorry, Konoha-san. Naruto squeezed his eyes shut and waited for sleep to take him. Another day of classes came and went with the usual goings-on and activities. Asuna and Ayaki would fight, Ayaki would make not-so-subtle passes at Negi and so on. Naruto found it funny how the boy could get so flustered by his students. They seemed to enjoy teasing him and placing the poor boy in uncomfortable positions. Though Naruto had a feeling that some of the girls did actually have feelings for the young teacher. Ayaki and Meiki, obviously, they didn't even bother to hide it. Kadoka liked him too, though she was unbelievably shy. And Naruto had a sneaking suspicion about Asuna. The girl definitely tried hard to keep to the idea that Negi was just an annoying kid, but Naruto could see the way she cast worried glances at him occasionally. And despite all her protest when Naruto commented, "You certainly react when one of the girls displays some affection for Negi Bozu," said Naruto when the Negi group stayed after class, apparently waiting for Negi. Yes, they even sleep together sometimes. Konoha commented with a sly grin that, for some reason, seemed odd on her. Both Asuna and Negi turned red and sputtered incoherently while the others laughed. You certainly know how to pick him, Negi, Naruto said with a smile. Unconsciously he glanced at Kufei for a second. The girl did the same and there was a brief moment when their eyes locked. Naruto felt an odd warm feeling hit him in the gut for a moment, but quickly shook it off and looked away. That was odd. Finally Negi left with the girls, making some excuse. Naruto waited for a minute before leaving behind them. Now it was time for a little reconnaissance. He left the building and walked casually around campus for a few minutes until he spotted his quarry. Negi and his group were moving off into the woods, over near the world tree. Naruto cautiously snuck into the edge of the woods and then immediately vanished into the treetops. Being a shinobi of the hidden leaf, he moved deftly through the branches until he was almost on top of the group traveling below. They ended up in a small clearing with some old ruins, an old building. And Chachimaru and Evangeline were waiting for them. Naruto frowned and hid in a tree at the edge of the clearing. He had a pretty good view and, for once, was close enough to hear without chakra. Asuna, Konoha, Nodoka and Setsuna all lined up in front of Negi while Yu and Kufei stood off the side. Nodoka was glancing around nervously while Asuna and Setsuna, for once not having a serious look on her face, just stood casually. Konoha was wearing her usual grin. Okay, let's begin. Evangeline spoke. Setsuna, you need to repress your ki. Magic and ki will cancel each other out without practice. The girl instructed. Setsuna nodded. Alright, Evangeline-san, she said and closed her eyes in concentration for a moment. I'm going to try it now, Negi said, withdrawing 4 cards. Naruto stared at the card in confusion. Some sort of magic item? Invoke contract for 180 seconds. Negi began. The cards began to glow. Ministra Negi Konoha, Miyazaki Nodoka, Kagurazaki Asuna, Sakurazaki Setsuna. In turn the strange energy began to surround the 4 girls. They squirmed with some discomfort but otherwise remained still. Okay, let's move on. Evangeline said. Expand the anti-material shield onto everyone at full power, she commanded. Negi nodded. Suddenly the magical aura grew and surrounded the girls. Negi frowned in concentration. Okay. Now hold it for 3 minutes and then fire off 199 magical arrows to the north. I expanded the barrier so you don't have to hold back. Evangeline explained, sucking idly on a juice box. In the trees, Naruto tensed up slightly. A barrier? Could it detect him? If so, then Evangeline showed no sign of acknowledging his presence. Slowly Naruto relaxed. He would just have to wait and see. UGHH, Negi muttered. He raised his staff at the sky. 199 spirits of light. Gather unto me and strike at my enemies. He shouted. Light erupted from the tip of the staff and shot off into the sky in a blaze of light arrows. In the sky they exploded in a brilliant fashion. The attack elicited a small "ooh" from Kufei. So this is magic, you said, staring intently at the sky. Naruto was swearing silently as he gripped the tree branch. Damn it. One of those things almost took my head off. He glanced back down. But that was an impressive display. Is this the power of magic? Suddenly Negi collapsed in exhaustion, the strain of holding the magic too much for him. Negi. Negi-kun. Asuna and the others gathered around him worriedly. Evangeline snorted but did nothing to help her new student. This is pointless if he is going to collapse at just that, she said. He may have inherited incredible magical power, but it is a wasted gift, she said coldly. Kamo the Ermine, who was sitting on a nearby rock, looked up and spoke. Hey Evangeline-san, don't you think you're going too hard on him? Iniki is only 10 years old after all. Naruto stared at the creature. It talks. He though. Why am I not surprised? Everything is more than it seems around here. He used up more magic by summoning the 4 contracts and then the 199 magical arrows than he did during the fight at the school trip. Kamo continued. It's only natural he passed out. Any normal mage would too. Evangeline glared at Kamo. Shut up you stupid furball. You think I'd just settle for an ordinary mage? How about I cook you up and eat you? She growled. Kamo quailed and backed away. Don't you think that's a bit harsh, Evangeline? Asuna spoke up, saving Kamo from an early death. School trip? Naruto filed an information away for later. Evangeline shook her head and glared. He should have prepared for this and more when he asked me to be his master. Don't think I'll just let him get by with half-assed training, she said, turning to Negi who was beginning to come around. Listen up, boya. Excuses and tears won't work on me, she said with an evil grin. If you make even the slightest complaint, I'll drink your blood down to the last drop. Nodoka and Kanoka looked a little shocked, but Negi didn't even seem fazed by the threat. Okay Evangeline-san. I'm counting on you, he said energetically. Naruto stared hard at Evangeline from his spot in the tree. Did she just say she drink his blood? I thought she looked familiar. Kyuubi. What is she, some kind of vampire? Naruto asked in disbelief. Yes, actually. Dark Evangeline. Probably the most deadly vampire to walk this earth in the past years. I encountered her a few times during my travels. Dawn. Know how she ended up a kid though? Naruto frowned but said nothing. Magic and now vampires? It would make sense actually. So this kid is a mage of some sort. And he is going to Evangeline for training, he assessed. Probably. That kid must have a death wish or something. Negi began talking again, drawing Naruto from his mental conversation. By the way, if I wanted to defeat a dragon, how long would I need to train? He asked as if it was the most innocent questions in the world. Now Naruto's eyes bugged out. Dragons? Evangeline turned around and gave Negi an odd look. Say that again, she said. Negi blinked. If I wanted to defeat a dragon, huh? Evangeline looked at him hard, then she proceeded to punch him hard upside the head. Are you some kind of moron? She screamed. WHO fights a dragon in 21st century Japan? Off to the side, Asuna gave a confused glance over to Yu. What's this about a dragon? She asked. Yu answered without taking her eyes off of the verbal pounding that Negi was receiving. Well, you might not believe this, but she began explaining their previous day's visit to the library island and the dragon-guarded door. After a few more minutes, Evangeline finally called the training to an end. Okay, that is enough for today. Class dismissed, she said. Negi nodded and looked back at the group. Thank you all for coming, he said with a bow. Kufei, Nodoka and Yu left. Negi turned and saw Asuna standing with his back to her. Asuna-san, what's wrong? He asked, confused. Oh, nothing, she said, though from her look she was building up to something. Up in his spot, Naruto could already see an argument coming. I heard the story. You know, how you went to Library Island without telling me, she said, looking back at him. Her voice was deadly calm. Negi started stuttering out an excuse. Oh, well, I didn't know what dangers we would be facing and... Yeah, I know about that too. Asuna interjected with a huff. I don't know about dragons, but there was something really insedible in there, right? She asked. Now Naruto was completely clueless about what was going on. In where? That was dangerous. Why didn't you take me with you, you damn brat? Asuna was shouting now, and for some odd reason had a small blush on her face, though from anger or something else Naruto didn't know. Seems Asuna really cares a lot about him after all. Naruto thought as he watched the drama unfolding. Asuna-san, you were never involved with us in the first place. I thought that we shouldn't cause you too much trouble all the time so. Naruto winced. Strike 1. Asuna angrily grabbed Negi by the front of his shirt, causing him to flounder a bit. Never involved. Why would you say that after all this time, you brat? She half screamed in disbelief. What I mean is, I didn't want to put an uninvolved, normal person like Asuna-san in any danger. Negi said, trying to get loose from the girl's grip. Strike 2. Naruto thought, watching the rage play over Asuna's face. Uninvolved. She shrieked. Why do you think I've been learning kendo from Setsuna-san, even when I barely have any free time? She asked, yelled. Naruto glanced quickly at Kanoka and Setsu who were watching the argument in silence. Asuna knows kendo. Interesting. I didn't ask you to do that. Negi yelled back at Asuna. Why are you getting angry with me? Why? I didn't know you thought of me like that. You stupid shrimp. Asuna yelled, her AMRS flailing out in anger. Now Negi decided to join in the insults. You're not all that mature either, you violent monkey. He yelled back. The insults began flying and poor Kamo was caught in between. What did you call me? I don't want to hear it from some dumb kid who doesn't even have hair where it counts, Asuna yelled back. Naruto had to repress a chuckle at that one. Asuna-san is the pipin' one who still wears bare panties. Negi yelled back. Okay, now Naruto couldn't hold back a small laugh. Even he knew what pipin' meant. Strike 3 and you're out. Asuna stared at Negi in shock, her blush coming back in full force. She suddenly had a giant fan. Naruto had no clue where she pulled that from, in her hands. You. Negi's eyes widened as Asuna gave a furious swing. Jerk. She cried, punctuated by smacking Negi clear across the field. Naruto winced. That had to hurt. I'm not talking to you anymore, Asuna yelled as she ran out of the clearing. As she went, Naruto noticed, with some surprise, that she actually had tears in her eyes. Doesn't seem like the type to cry a lot. Asuna-san. Negi called, pulling himself up and sporting a new bruise on his forehead. The boy looked pretty upset. Geez, what are you idiots doing? Evangeline commented, making everyone realize that she and Chachimaru were still there with them. I've got something to talk to you and Kano about Boya. Stop by my place on your way back, she said. Negi and Kanoka looked at her in puzzlement but agreed. The group began to make their way towards Evangeline's cabin, while Naruto watched them from his tree. I should follow them, but if they're heading to this vampire's home. Naruto debated for a moment before deciding to risk it. He followed them to a small and rather warm-looking cabin in the woods around Mahora. It sure doesn't look like the lair of some dark vampire. Evangeline always had a certain taste of hers, Kyuubi said. Naruto crept close until he was hiding underneath one of the windows. He applied some chakra into his feet and, using an old Shinoi training method, scaled the wall until he hung right below the upper window. He cautiously peeked through the window. It was a cozy-looking cabin, not at all what Naruto would have expected. Negi, Kanoka and Setsuna were sitting around a table while Evangeline stood off to the side, giving some kind of lecture. However, all that means is that you are giant tanks of magical energy. Evangeline said, looking the part of a schoolteacher. What you need to actually be able to use it is to increase your willpower so you can better control your magic. She explained. And to improve the effectiveness of your magic. You need training for both. Also, just as you need willpower to control magic, it takes physical power to control ki. It was around then that she noticed that neither Negi or Kanoka were paying attention, Ngi too upset about his fight with Asuna and Kanoka comforting him. Listen to me, damn it, she yelled, practically blowing Negi back. You're gonna get killed if you don't stop moping around. Outside, Naruto winced at the shouting, and he thought Evangeline was scary before. Anyway, Kanoka, I got a message from Aishin. Evangeline said, calming down and leaving Avery scared. Negi. Kanoka perked up at the name. From father? Naruto focused hard now. They were talking about Kanoka, and he needed some better intel. It was bad enough when he had little information about her as a normal girl. Now that you know the truth, if it is your wish, he would like me to teach you all about magic. The vampire said. Kanoka blinked in surprise. Certainly with your power, you could aim to be a master magi. The thing that Negi is trying to be? Kanoka asked, glancing at Negi. Naruto shifted under the window. Ah, just great. So apparently Kano-san is powerful, just fucking great, he thought. I doubt she has any skill at all, considering the meeting they're having. It shouldn't be too hard. Maybe. Yeah. Evangeline continued, snapping Naruto out of his thoughts. With your power you could really be useful to the world. You should give it some thought. Kanoka looked down, deep in thought. And now for you, Boya. Evangeline turned back to Negi. To determine which direction that your training should go, I'm going to let you choose your own combat style. Negi gave her a puzzled look. Combat style? He asked. Naruto leaned forward a bit. This was getting interesting. Evangeline switched back into teacher mode. Yes. From what I can tell, there are two paths that would suit you well. I'll simplify it. First, is the wizard style, leaving your defense almost entirely up to your disciples. You would cast powerful spells from the back line. It's a stable style. She explained. Negi rubbed his chin in thought. Next is the magic swordsman. To supplement your magic, you would train your body so you could fight alongside your disciples on the front line. You would also use spells that emphasize on speed. It's a pretty free-form style. Negi frowned, obviously thinking of each style. Wizard, or magic swordsman. He repeated, trying to get a feel for each. There are advantages and disadvantages for each. Evangeline went on. Personally I think wizard style would suit you best since you're such a clever person. She seemed to use the word clever as if it were painful. Negi thought for a moment. May I ask a question? He said finally. Evangeline sighed and nodded. What is it? She said, though the look on her face said that she already knew what he was about to ask. What style did the Thousand Master use? Evangeline smirked. I thought you would ask that. I would have to say that Naji's style was that of the magic was strong to the extent that he didn't need any disciples. I'll give you time to think about it, said Evangeline as she began walking towards the stairs. Come on Kanoka, I've got more information for you on stairs. Kanoka nodded and the two girls left. Negi spent the next few minutes cycling through the martial arts moves that Kufei had taught him, all the while a thoughtful expression on his face. Setsuna sat off to the side, watching quietly. Outside, Naruto watched the boy train. He certainly is persistent. Reminds me of another certain Gaki that I know, Kyuubi commented. Naruto nodded and watched Negi. His determination certainly did remind Naruto of himself. That drive to achieve his goals. Hey Kyuubi, Naruto thought suddenly. Yeah? That guy that he mentioned. This Thousand Master. Who was he? Naruto asked curiously. He was vaguely aware that Negi had stopped practicing and was going on about his argument with Asuna again. Well now, I never met the man, but the stories traveled around. Nagi Springfield, the Thousand Master, was a mage of exceptional power. He was said to have known over 1,000 spells, hence the title. He went around acting the hero and many people feared and looked up to him. He was a lot like the Yondaime, now that I think about it. Naruto paused when Kyuubi mentioned his dad's name. Springfield? Then that means. Yes, it appears that the young teacher is his son or something. It would certainly explain his constant interest in the hero and strive to be like the man. A son trying to outdo his father. Naruto frowned. The son of a hero, trying to protect those close to him and be like his father. Naruto felt a sudden connection to Negi. Both of them had similar goals. This Thousand Master. What happened to him? Nobody knows. He just disappeared one day. Many think he is dead. Kyuubi answered simply. Naruto looked out into the forests in thought. Negi obviously held on to the hope that his father was alive. It gave him a goal to reach for, to know that his father lived. That is where we differ, Negi Springfield. Naruto thought sadly. You still have a chance. I know for a fact that my father is dead. Kit. Kyuubi said softly. The demon never referred to Naruto as Kit before. It is all right Kyuubi. I have forgiven you for the attack. I suffered a lot, but in the end it doesn't matter. Naruto thought. Though you never did tell me exactly why you attacked Konoha that day. Maybe one day I will, Gaki, but not yet. A moment of silence passed between the two. Kyuubi and Naruto had never necessarily liked each other, but there was a respect between them. They were bonded and that was a deep connection indeed. Finally Kyuubi spoke up. Okay, Gaki. Sappy moment over with. Shouldn't you be paying attention to your target? Naruto blinked. Yes, he should. Naruto prepared to move back down the wall when he saw Negi walk out of the house. He had one of those strange cards pressed to his head, as if communicating with it somehow. Suddenly a magical circle appeared in front of Negi and a puff of smoke appeared. Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. It looked a lot like summoning. And then the smoke cleared and Naruto got a good eyeful of what, or rather who, Negi had summoned. It was Asuna, and apparently she had been in the shower at the moment because she was quite wet. And naked. Naruto was able to hold out for a moment before his perverted side gave in and he flew back with a nosebleed. Now normally that wouldn't have been much of a problem, except he was standing on the side of a cabin. It was a painful few seconds. The last thing Naruto heard before he passed out was Kyuubi saying, and that's why it doesn't pay to be a pervert and a shinobi. Naruto groaned and opened his eyes, a monster headache already on him. What had happened? Then he remembered. The nosebleed and the painful fall. That would explain the headache. Suddenly he realized that he was inside. He sat up, ignoring the pain of protest in his head, and glanced around. He was in a bed in a small cozy log cabin and... Cabin. Oh damn. Hey, he's up. Naruto whipped around and saw Kanoka standing in the doorway. He immediately began to mentally swear as Negi, Asuna, Setsuna, Shikamaru and Evangeline walked in. They all had questioning looks on their faces. Naruto-sensei. Shikamaru started. What were you doing snooping around my house? Evangeline finished, her voice deadly calm. Naruto gulped and calmed himself down. Shinobi training came back to him. Well. You were spying on us. Negi said with a frown. Naruto sighed. Guess there was no way around it. Okay, yeah I was. He admitted. Setsuna frowned. For how long? She asked. Naruto noticed that she had a hand gripped on the katana that she always carried around. Oh great. Naruto could lie. But given the circumstances they probably would figure it out if he was. Since you got to the cabin. No, I followed you from class. I saw you in that clearing. Naruto said, closing his eyes. Negi's eyes widened in panic while Setsuna frowned and began to draw the blade. Kanoka had a worried expression on her face. And Naruto-sensei. Does that mean that you... Hi. I saw Negi using magic. Naruto said. He sighed and leaned back down into the bed, his head still pounding. At hearing this, Negi broke his silence and began to flip out. Wah. Oh no, someone else knows. You can't tell anyone, Naruto-san? Please? Nobody can find out. He waved his arms in panic. Naruto waved a hand at him dismissively. Relax, Negi-kun. I won't tell anyone your secret, he said. Negi looked up at him in surprise. Really? He asked in disbelief. That look was echoed on the faces of everyone present. Oh sure. It's not exactly my secret to share now, is it? I was just curious because of the way all of you acted recently, he said. Evangeline silently sighed. These idiots don't know how to keep a secret. Nay, sensei? Setsuna asked. Naruto looked over at her. How exactly did you hurt yourself? She asked. Negi nodded. Yes. When I was outside, I summoned Asuna and then suddenly you fell out of nowhere with a nosebleed. He said, a completely innocent look on his face. Naruto thought back to the moment and a little trail of blood escaped his nose when he remembered seeing Asuna. Well I kinda saw you summon Asuna-san. He left the sentence open. Asuna, up to this point, had stayed quiet, an angry look on her face. If she had been pissed at Negi before that little incident, she was downright hateful now. At hearing Naruto's answer, she immediately stormed out of the cabby angrily, slamming the door behind her. Negi turned and began to run after her. Asuna-san, wait, he called. At the edge of the door, he stopped and turned back to the group. Promise you won't tell anyone, Naruto-san? He asked. Naruto just nodded. Negi smiled and then chased after Asuna with Kamo running close behind. Kanoka turned and looked back at the blonde-haired boy. Well sensei, I guess now you're a part of our little club, she said with a smile. Evangeline rolled her eyes. Oh terrific. Another idiot for the collection. Kanoka and Setsuna left next, saying that they had tests to study for. That left Naruto alone with Shikamaru and Evangeline. The boy shifted uncomfortably for a moment. Well, I guess I should leave as well. Sorry to bother you, Evangeline-san. He said, standing up and heading for the door as fast as possible without being too obvious. Wait. A sharp command from the girl made Naruto freeze. He mentally cringed. Naruto turned back around to see Evangeline staring at him with piercing eyes. I sensed someone watching us during the fight with Shikamaru, she said. That was you, wasn't it? Shikamaru looked surprisingly at her master. Evangeline stared accusingly at Naruto. The boy sighed. I suppose that I won't be able to get out of this vampire's home without at least some truth, he thought. Instantly he switched into cold Anbu mode. Yes. That was me, he said evenly. Chachimaru blinked in surprise while Evangeline narrowed her eyes. Just who are you really? She asked harshly. You can lie to those brats all you want, but I can sense power inside of you. Naruto gave her a cold smirk. And what will you do, Evangeline-san? He asked in his best, evil, voice. Even the vampire seemed a little taken aback at it. Will you try to kill me? Evangeline snorted. No, it would cause an annoying problem if you were to disappear suddenly, and besides, maybe you will provide a decent boost for the boya. But I highly doubt you were worth my time, she said smugly, turning her back to him in a dismissive gesture. Naruto gave a fanged smirk. He knew what would make this girl sweat a little. I wouldn't be so dismissive, Evangeline-san. Most things are never what they seem. Naruto drew up a small bit of Kyuubi's chakra and let it out in a small burst that shook the room. It was finally the weekend and classes were over. Not only that, but it was Golden Week, so many students were heading off on vacation. All over Mahora Academy, students were scattering about with plans for their weekend. Naruto and Negi were casually walking down one of the streets leading from the school buildings. Naruto sighed contentedly as he surveyed the peace around him. The last few days of class had been somewhat stressful and yet amusing at the same time. Evangeline had shown up to class for every single day, and did nothing but glare at Naruto for the entire time. Naruto found it rather funny. Negi walked beside him, clad in his usual teacher outfit, while Naruto wore his typical jeans, and white coat over a black t-shirt. Next to him, Negi sighed as well, though his bore a trace of melancholy. It's been 5 days since Asuna spoke to me, Naruto-san. The boy said in despair. Naruto rolled his eyes. Their little argument really was affecting the boy. It was true. Asuna had all but ignored Negi for the past 5 days. Naruto couldn't really blame her, but he was still getting sick of it. Negi, you really need to lighten up, Naruto said, waving to a few passing students. When Asuna is ready to forgive you, then she will. That girl may be loud and brash, but she still does care about you, he advised. Inwardly he frowned. Asuna truly confused him. On the outside she was loud and overly violent to Negi, yet he had seen her care for the boy. Yes, but we also have to find some way to get past the dragon guarding that door. Kamo, who was riding on Negi's shoulder, spoke up. Our troubles sure are piling up. Naruto gave the small mammal a quick glance. After learning that Naruto knew about Negi's mage status, the group had filled the boy in on all the happenings of the school. The Kyoto trip, Library Island, and the whole deal with Pactios and magic. Naruto had smirked when he found out that Pactios were made with a kiss. Teasing Negi about that had been too easy. Still, it explained why all of the girls hung around Negi. Oh, I don't care about that, I just want to make up with Asuna-san. Negi cried out, causing Kamo to jump. Naruto was about to respond when a car suddenly pulled up at the curb next to them. The door opened and Ayaka stepped out, looking as resplendent as always. Negi-sensei, she said cheerfully. Negi smiled back, ever the kind one. Ah, class representative, how are you today? He asked. Naruto rolled his eyes again as he saw the look on Ayaka's face. Can't she at least make the Shotokan a little less blatant? He mentally asked, as Ayaka began to tell Negi about some weekend getaway at a southern island. You're against that sort of thing? Seems rather hypocritical considering what you and Kufei have. Kyuubi quipped. Naruto turned red. All we did is spar and hang out for a little while, it's nothing like that, he mentally screamed. Kyuubi chuckled. But you wish it was, Naruto scowled. He and Kufei had actually been spending more time together after classes that week. When the rest of Negi's friends found out that Naruto knew about his secret, it seemed that they welcomed him a little more fully. Well, in Kufei's case they spent more time sparring and talking at Chao's food stand. Truth be told, Naruto enjoyed the company of the Chinese martial artist. She was happy, energetic, strong, cute. Wait, did he just think that last part? Huh? Kyuubi roared in triumph. You do like her? Kyuubi, shut up. Besides, even if I did like her, it would not matter anyway. This is a mission. I doubt she would like me when I kill off one of her freaking classmates. Naruto pointed out. Kyuubi stayed silent. Naruto smirked and then glanced around. During his mental argument, apparently Ayaka had taken Negi, leaving Naruto standing on the curb alone. Negi looked around in wonder at the vast expanse of ocean and beach. The sun burned overhead, topping off the perfect tropical beach setting. Off to the far left a large boardwalk sat, leading out over the ocean where small huts were located further down, and the whole complex trailed off into the jungles off into the island. Amazing. The boy exclaimed. It really is a tropical island. Ayaka stood behind him, a pleasant smile on her face. Inwardly she was cheering herself at her victory. A romantic weekend alone with Negi-sensei. I can hardly believe it, she mentally gushed. The effect was immediately ruined by excited shouts from behind them. Ayaka froze in horror as the entirety of Class 3A came dashing down onto the beach, each in a bathing suit and ready for some fun. Huh? Was all the class representative could manage. Suddenly, as the girls began playing, Asuna, Kanoka and Setsuna walked up behind Negi and Ayaka. I don't see why I had to come along, Asuna said with a frown. Kanoka sighed. Because you need to have some fun, Asuna. Staying angry for too long isn't healthy, the girl said. Negi saw the trio and immediately ran over. Asuna took one look at Negi and began walking away. Negi froze mid-step. Ah, Asuna-san, he called, somewhat desperately, but the girl ignored him. Negi slumped in defeat while Setsuna and Kanoka sighed. Ayaka began walking away, grumbling about the unfairness of the situation. Well now, this looks like a fun time. Negi, Kanoka and Setsuna turned around to see Naruto walking toward them, clad in a black bathing suit. Both Kanoka and Setsuna blushed slightly when they saw his body. He was pretty well built for a boy his age. Negi smiled, somewhat forced at his coworker. Ah, Naruto-san. What are all of you doing here? He asked. Naruto chuckled. Well, after someone left me standing alone at the sidewalk, insert annoyed glare. I headed back to the school and mentioned to Asakura that Ayaka had grabbed you off to some island. He then looked around at the beach and small huts further down. This class sure loves to have fun. I barely had time to blink before they all decided that a beach trip sounded awesome. Negi chuckled along with Naruto. That definitely sounded like his students. Then Kanoka spoke up. Well, come on then. Let's have some fun. It truly was a fun time for Naruto. Konoha had no beaches and certainly he had very little time for just playing around. He swam around for a while in the water, at the constant urging of Akira and Akko, though he had to escape once the girls realized that attacking Naruto was almost as much fun as Negi. I swear all these girls have it for younger guys, he thought, heading out to the beach. After a while ended up playing frisbee with Kufei, Kaide and the winds Fuka and Fumika, SP. Heads up, Degazaru. Kaide called out, sending the disc hurling at Kufei. The other girl leapt lightning fast, sending the disc spinning into the snad beyond. Naruto's sweat dropped at the strength of the two girls. I barely saw them throw that thing. Heads up sensei. Naruto snapped up suddenly as the frisbee struck him in the side of the head. Kufei gasped in embarrassment and ran over. Ah, sorry Naruto-sensei, she said. Naruto pulled himself up and waved her off. Ma, I'm fine. But I think I'm gonna go lounge around for a while, he said. This was greeted with a general ah of disappointment. Naruto just chuckled and found a chair nearby and laid back. He began watching the class, looking from one group to the next with mild amusement. Akko and Meiki were tackling Negi in the water, intent on playing with him. Ayaka joined in and the whole thing turned into a tug-of-war match. Then suddenly Nodoka and Haruna joined the struggle. Naruto chuckled. Poor Negi. He watched as Negi made his escape, only to run smack dab into Chizuru who, for her part, looked rather surprised when he got stuck in her swimsuit's top. Naruto blushed, his perverted side kicking in. Negi certainly was a luck bastard, having all these girls practically throw themselves at him. His thoughts got even worse as the girls took Negi's unfortunate encounter as some sort of contest, and began suffocating the boy with their breast. Naruto sighed. How does he do it? Negi-sensei? Chizuru asked worriedly as the boy began to float belly up in the water. The reaction from the other girls was immediate. Wah! Negi-sensei is drowning. Someone do CPR. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. The boy would be fine in a bit. A bit further away, Asuna was with Kanoka and Setsuna. She turned towards the noise with a small frown. Geez, what are they doing over there? The day passed as the girls enjoyed their time at the beach. Games of volleyball and tag sprung up and some just swam in the water. Naruto glanced more than once at Mei and Asakura who were sunbathing a bit to Naruto's left. The boy was struck with the notion of just how beautiful most of the girls in 3A really were. Naruto began looking over the girls again, but this time taking more notice of the fact that most of them were wearing very small swimsuits. Are some of these girls really only 15? The blonde ninja thought as he stared at some of the girls, namely Kaide, Mana and Chizuru. Got me brat, but we certainly are lucky that they are. Kyuubi giggled perversely and Naruto couldn't help but join in. Then his eyes landed back on the group playing volleyball. Well, more like they landed on Kufei. The girl was playing a game of volleyball with Akko, Meiki and Sakurako. The girl took a flying leap and spiked the ball over the net with a cheer. The girls all cheered as Ku-fei landed deftly. Naruto tried not to stare at the girl, but for the most part it wasn't working. She really was cute. Naruto shook his head to clear his mind. He could not afford to be thinking like that during a mission such as this. Still, Naruto briefly wondered about the Chinese martial artist. To be honest, he wanted to know more about her. He had tried to maintain a distance from the class, which Negi obviously failed extremely at, but over the week, when he and Ku-fei would practice their skills, Naruto began to realize that he had developed something more for the girl. Damn it! He hissed. Naruto stood up from his chair and decided to take a walk down the beach. Hopefully it would clear his head and focus him some. Ku-fei laughed and hit the volleyball back over the net. The girl was enjoying herself greatly, for once actually playing and doing something other than martial arts. I wish Naruto-sensei would play more though, she thought. Unconsciously a blush found its way onto her face as she thought of the blonde boy. She knew that he didn't really talk a lot about himself to most people, the most being that one time at the food stand, but over the week the two of them had gotten to know each other a little bit better. Ku-fei found herself enjoying their evening sparring matches, after her lessons with Negi, more than just as fellow fighters. She didn't really understand it at all, but Ku-fei wanted to spend more time with the boy. She glanced back at the chair where Naruto was seated, and watched as he got up and began to walk off. She felt a little disappointed, but for the most part was staring at his upper body. He certainly was built like a fighter. Her blush deepened. Nay. Ku-fei don't space out, Digazaru. Kaide walked up beside Ky-fei, startling the girl from her staring. Ku-fei rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. "Ah, sorry, She grinned. Kaide raised an eyebrow and looked back at the direction Ku-fei had been staring, at Naruto's retreating form. "You like, don't you, Digazaru?" Kaide said plainly. Ku-fei looked startled for a second and began shaking her head furiously. "Wah? No Naruto-sensei is a friend, Nothing like that." She tried to explain in a panicky tone. Kaide chuckled and shook her head. "Ma, whatever you say. But if I were you, I'd take him before someone else does, Digazaru." Ku-fei cocked her head in confusion. Kaide nodded to the girls scattered around the beach. Naruto-sensei attracts almost as much attention as Negibozu, and considering our class, she trailed off. "Besides, from the looks of it you do like him, Digazaru," the kunoichi said and then left to let Ku-fei think. The blonde martial artist paused and gazed down at her feet. Did she like Naruto-sensei? The boy in question sneezed violently as he walked, sending him stumbling. "Gah," he muttered, shaking off the sudden sneeze. He shook his head and tried to focus his thoughts again. He needed to figure out when to strike. He had sent his message to Konoha via summon the other day, but no word had returned. Flashback: Naruto closed the door to his apartment and glanced around, purely out of habit. Satisfied that he was alone, Naruto began forming hand signs. Kaichios no jutsu. There was a cloud of smoke, and when it cleared, a small black fox sat attentively. Naruto nodded and withdrew his letter. "Kaeru, I need you to deliver this to the Hokage, all right?" he asked his summon. The small fox yipped in agreement and grabbed the letter in his teeth. Naruto dismissed the summon and headed to bed, satisfied that his message would be received. Flashback: end. Naruto sighed for the 100th time and glanced around. He had been so caught up in his thoughts that the boy hadn't realized the distance he had walked. He glanced up and saw Negi resting nearby on the sand. "Hey Negi," Naruto called in greeting. Negi looked up and gave a weak grin in response. Naruto stopped and frowned slightly. It seemed that, despite all the fun they were having, Negi was still down about his fight with Asuna. "Hey there Naruto-san." Negi greeted as the other boy walked up. Naruto plopped down in the sand next to his coworker and cocked his head. "Are you still bummed out from that fight?" he asked. Negi just sighed and nodded. Naruto a hand through his golden hair in irritation. "I thought I told you. If you just apologize and give it time, things will get better." "But I already tried apologizing and it made things worse," Negi exclaimed. Naruto winced. He had a point there. "Look, just, Negi-sensei." Both boys looked up to see Ayaka walking towards them, Chizuru, Natsumi and Asakura in tow. Naruto wordlessly nodded to the other girls when they greeted him. "Listen sensei," the class representative said. "We are really sorry about before." She apologized. Negi just waved it off with his usual politeness. "No really, it's fine," he said. Ayaka frowned, obviously sensing the dark mood in his voice. "Sene, what's the matter?" she asked. "He and Asuna had a fight." Naruto spoke for the boy. Ayaka and the girls looked surprised to hear that. Really? Ayaka asked in disbelief. Negi nodded sadly and immediately the girls agreed to help the boy make up with Asuna. Naruto rolled his eyes at the plans they were coming up with and stood to leave. Hey, Naruto-sensei, Asakura called to him. Don't you want to help Negi make up with Asuna? No, the Anbu answered simply and began walking away. Everyone else sweat dropped. Naruto stretched and craned his neck for a better view. He had slipped on a blue tank top and headed over to the wooden lounges that were built over the water at the private resort. Actually, most of the class had migrated over to that area as the day grew later. Currently Naruto was laying on the side roof of a cone-shaped pavilion, listening to Akko, Maki, Akira and Yuna as they talked. Well, actually he had been listening but quickly got bored as all he seemed to talk about was boys. That's true. Most boys these days are depressed like that. Naruto rolled his eyes and began spinning a kunai in his finger. He wasn't overly worried about being spotted. Nobody had bothered to look up yet. He started paying attention again right as Akko started talking. I guess Negi is pretty cool since he is enthusiastic, she commented. That got the girls going on a conversation about their child teacher. Naruto just sighed and put away his kunai and replaced with his Icha Paradise book. Hey guys, what do you think about Naruto-sensei? Akira asked suddenly. The girls thought for a moment and Naruto secretly began to listen in again. Well, we don't really know much about him, Yuna said with a small frown. He always leaves right after class and I never see him around. Akira and Akko nodded in agreement. He always stays pretty quiet about himself. I mean, isn't it strange? We get not one, but two teachers that are so much younger than us, Akko said quietly. Yuna nodded. Well, Naruto-sensei isn't that much younger. He said he was 13, so he's only a year or two behind us, she said. Akira chuckled. Well, we're pretty lucky. Negi is pretty cute, but Naruto is too and he's closer to our age, she pointed out. Akko raised an eyebrow at her friend as she slurped down a drink. Would you actually date sensei? She asked, somewhat incredulous. Akira shook her head. Just saying. Those whisker marks of his do certainly make him look cute. Maki pipped in. Akko and Akira nodded. I wonder how he got them. Maybe birthmarks. Well, it doesn't really matter. Sensei doesn't really get close to any of us, does he? Maki, however, hummed thoughtfully. Actually, I've seen him practicing with Kufei after school all this week, she said. Yuna looked at her in surprise. Really? With Kufei? Do you think they have something going between them? She asked. Akko giggled and Akira smiled. They would definitely be asking Kufei about this later. Above them, Naruto groaned. Even his students were starting to think there was something between the two. All they did was practice fighting, dot and talk, and eat together, and a row back to Icha. Naruto growled and practically shoved the book into his face. Yuna spoke again. But hey, if he was with Kufei, does that mean Naruto-sensei is a martial artist? She queried. Maki hummed thoughtfully. Maybe. When I watched them fight for a while once, sensei actually beat Kufei. All three girls exclaimed. Nobody they knew could beat Kufei, so he really is a martial artist? Akko asked. Actually, I'm just proficient in it. My talents lie elsewhere, Naruto said, getting bored with lying around and making himself known. The girls jumped and looked up to see Naruto lounging on the roof above them. Naruto-sensei, Yuna asked in surprise. What are you doing up there? Reading, Naruto said with a small blush as he flipped the page. The girl's sweat dropped at his reason. Maki caught the blush and blinked curiously. Nei-sensei, what book is that? She asked innocently. Naruto looked down at her with a bit of nervousness. This was one book he did not want to be caught reading in a group of girls. Noting much Maki-san. Just a novel, he answered quickly. He jumped down from the roof in a quick motion, startling the girls. Yuna narrowed her eyes in suspicion as she looked at the book in Naruto's hands. Well then, she said taking a step. Naruto tensed and turned to look for an escape route. That look held nothing good. I guess we can see for ourselves. And just like that Yuna was on him. Naruto calmly dodged to one side and Yuna went crashing past him. Maki joined in and lunged next. Naruto whirled around her, never once taking the book away from his face. Good try, he said, still reading. Suddenly a red ribbon wrapped around the book and ripped it from Naruto's surprised grasp. He looked down to see Maki sitting with her gymnastics ribbon in one hand and his Icha Paradise book in the other. Oh. Ha-sensei, Yuna said as all four girls crowded around the book. Now let's see what it really, The girl's face heated up as she scanned the book. Akira, Maki and Akko were in similar states, staring at the pages with heavy blush forming. Naruto gulped and turned to run. Ah well then I gotta go, He said, "Naruto-sensei is a pervert." The four girls yelled in unison as Naruto took off running down the boardwalk. Man, that was close. Naruto ended up at one of the far gazebos, where he saw Negi standing around with Kanoka, Setsuna, Yu, Nodoka and Asakura. Oh right, she knows about Negi too. The boy reminded himself as he got closer. He raised a hand in greeting as the others looked up and saw him. "Hey Negi," Naruto said cheerfully. "Heard about what happened with the whole shark incident." At that, Negi slumped over while Setsuna scowled at Naruto. "Geez, you just had to remind him," she said. Naruto winced and smiled sheepishly. "Ah, sorry." He quickly tried to think of something else to talk about. Luckily Asakura did it for him. "Hey Naruto-sensei," the girl said, noticing something. "Is that a tattoo?" she asked, pointing to the Anbu tattoo on Naruto's right upper arm. Naruto froze. "Aw shit," he thought. "Cool down," he told himself. "Nobody here could possibly know what that tattoo means." Yeah, it is," he said. Nodoka and Kanoka gaped at him. "Why do you have a tattoo, Naruto-sensei?" Kanoka asked. Setsuna stared at the tattoo, analyzing it, as if she could discern some meaning from the ink. Naruto touched it and grimaced. "I got it when I was 10. He answered truthfully. "I joined a gang." He managed. Now everyone was staring at him. "A gang?" Negi asked incredulously. Naruto nodded weakly. "Yeah. I grew up by myself. And kinda fell in with the wrong crowd," he said, trying to make the tone in his voice signify embarrassment. Apparently it was working because Kanoka nodded sympathetically. "Oh, I'm sorry sensei. Did you I quit, yes," he answered for her. That seemed to mollify the group somewhat. Having a gang member for teacher didn't appeal to them, it seemed. "So what does it mean?" Asakura said curiously. Naruto glanced at her for a moment. "It means I'm one of the elite," he said simply. There was an awkward moment of silence now. Naruto decided he had better change topics before things got out of hand. "Negi, I was wondering. Do you think maybe I could learn one or two of those spells of yours?" he asked out of the blue. He had been thinking about it for a while, and Naruto decided, in the brief time it had taken him to flee from his students, that he might as well learn something useful from this mission. Besides, that magic looked like it would be an edge in a fight. It would give you an edge over enemy shinobi, as Kyuubi put it. Negi looked at him in light confusion while Asakura, Nodoka and Yu gasped. "Wait, Naruto-sensei knows?" Nanoka asked. Negi nodded and explained to them how Naruto had followed him during a training exercise. The other girls nodded and accepted it, all except for Yu. "So let me get this straight," she said with a small frown. "You not only trailed a mage and a vampire to their cabin, but also managed to spy on them without being detected by Evangeline?" she inquired. Naruto froze as the group looked at him curiously. He glanced around. All of them were looking at him expectantly. "Ah well, I grew up in a rough area," he lied quickly. "Stealth is second nature to me." That part wasn't necessarily a lie. Naruto was adept at stealth. "So Negi," he said quickly to change the subject. "How about it?" Negi sighed and shook his head. Nodoka and Yu asked too. "Just now, I told them what I tell you. I don't want any of my friends getting into danger because of me or my magic," he said. Naruto was about to respond when part of that last statement made him pause. "Friend?" he asked. Negi nodded with a smile. "Of course. I'd like to think Naruto-sensei is a friend," he said. Naruto, for his part, tried to hide his surprise. "Friend?" Sure, he had friends in Anbu, but they were more like business associates. The rookie 9 didn't count since most just saw him as the class doby. Naruto looked around, realizing that all the girls and Negi were looking at him with smiles. They considered him a friend? "You know Negi's secret, sensei," Kanoka said with a warm smile. "You're really part of the circle now." Asakura nodded. "Yeah sensei. We have to stick together if we want to help Negi-sensei," said the red-haired girl. Naruto stood for a moment, unsure of how to react. The group seemed genuinely happy, and Naruto had watched them interact. He admitted, he wanted that sort of friendship. Naruto smiled and nodded, a sense of finality showing on his face. "Sure, friends," he said. Inwardly, that small hope that the Sandaime would cancel his mission grew. It was night and all the students of Class 3A had retired to the scattering of huts along the water. Each student pretty much got their own. Ayaka's resort certainly was big. The moonlight cut like a silver knife through Negi's window as the boy tossed and turned in bed. He couldn't sleep. Even after all that had happened, his argument with Asuna came back to him. Negi hadn't meant to fight with the girl. It just sort of happened. Negi groaned and buried his head into the pillow. A sharp tapping sound made him squeeze his eyes shut tighter. The tapping got louder and Negi opened his eyes and sat up. He glanced around, and then noticed someone was standing outside his window. It was Asuna. Asuna-san. Negi acted, somewhat blearily as he rubbed his eyes. The girl motioned for him to come outside and held up a pair of swim trunks in her other hand. Negi asked curiously. My swimming trunks? The boy headed outside and took the swimsuit. After returning fully changed, he glanced uncertainly at Asuna. What are we? He trailed off as the girl grabbed him by the hand and led him to the stairs that led directly down into the sea. The girl still hadn't said a word. Asuna. Suddenly Negi was shoved forward and he went tumbling into the water. He came up sputtering. Asuna, unable to hold it any longer, burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. You should have seen the look on your face. The girl laughed as Negi looked up at her in confusion. Suddenly the girl's mood did a U-turn and she launched herself at the boy with a fierce kick. This is payback for what you said to me. After a minute of dodging and getting knocked around, the two stood panting in the waist-high water. Negi rubbed his head where Asuna had landed a kick on him. That was mean. Why did you do all that? He asked childishly. Asuna faced away from him for a moment, head raised high. I just remembered that I hadn't really played with you much since we came to this island, the girl said simply. Negi stared at her. He was really confused now. Earlier today the girl had been openly avoiding him. What had changed? Suddenly Naruto's words came back. Just give it time, Negi, and it will get better. Negi smiled lightly. You were right, Naruto-san. Suddenly Asuna looked back over at him and raised her arms. She began wading over to him and Negi raised his hands over his head, waiting for the girl to pound his face in. She's gonna hit me again, he thought worriedly. But instead of a fist to the head, Negi felt toe arms wrap around him and Asuna press up against him in a hug. Negi blushed and opened his eyes in surprise. Asuna-san? He stuttered out as she held him. Then Asuna spoke in a soft voice. I'm sorry for ignoring you this whole time, Negi, she said. Negi felt his heart leap at that. Asuna forgave him. I'm sorry too, Asuna-san. I didn't mean to make it seem like I wasn't including you in stuff. The boy said hurriedly. A big blush was forming on his face as Asuna hugged him. It felt rather nice. It's not just that, Asuna said, making Negi pause. The girl seemed to hesitate for a moment. I worry about you, Negi, she said softly. Negi blinked in surprise. Up until a little while ago, I didn't know why. You're too reckless. Negi felt something wet hit his cheek and realized it was a tear. Asuna was crying. I was worried you would get hurt when I wasn't looking, or maybe even die. She trailed off there. Asuna, you still want to look for your father, don't you? Even if I told you to stop? Asuna asked suddenly. Negi paused for a moment and nodded. He definitely would continue. Asuna wiped one arm across her eyes to dry them, then stood up straight, releasing Negi from the long hug. Let me protect you then, she said. I want you to see me as a proper partner. She finished, smiling now. Negi stared at Asuna, his blush getting heavier. Asuna-san. He started sputtering suddenly. I'm very glad you feel that way, but it wouldn't be proper and it's a little sudden, he said stuttering. Asuna began blushing too as she realized the implication of her words. That's not what I meant, you brat. All I'm saying is I can't stand worrying over you. What would Onee-chan say if she knew? I told you it's not like that. Their shouts carried across the island as the sun crept over the horizon in the early morning, sending rays of light knifing across the water and houses. Negi was glad that his argument with Asuna had come to an end, but still, there was a small part of him that thought, maybe he would like having Asuna as an actual partner. 2 huts down, Naruto was leaning back on the roof of his hut, watching the sun rise and listening to the two partners fight, laughing silently. Yes, he decided, those two would turn out fine. He sighed and let the new day wash over him, then with a leap, jumped and landed on his hut's patio. He leaned against the railing and stared out over the ocean in thought. This was nice, but there is still so much to do, he thought. He became suddenly aware of footsteps getting closer. Someone walked up behind him. Hello, Naruto-sensei. I need to talk to you about something, the girl said. Naruto frowned. He recognized the voice. Naruto opened the door to his teacher's apartment slowly, absorbing the incidents of the past few days in his mind. As if this mission couldn't get even more mixed up, now he had another problem. And that problem was Chao Lingshen. He sighed deeply as he entered the sparse apartment and closed the door behind him. The room was just as he had left it, dark with his few possessions scattered about. He shook his head and slumped down on the small couch near the door. Well now, this is getting bigger and bigger with each day. Naruto thought. Chao Lingshen. He never would have thought. I don't see what you're worried about. What she offered actually benefits you, brat. Kyuubi said from his mind. Naruto groaned and lay on his back, staring blankly at the ceiling. He thought back to that meeting on the veranda. Flashback. What can I do for you, Chao Lingshen-san? Naruto asked the girl. He was a little surprised by the girl's visit. Chao had never really interacted with Naruto, save for briefly talking at her food stand with Kufei. The look she wore now was definitely different from the usual. Her face showed deep intelligence and a dark intent behind it. I have a proposition for you, Naruto-sensei, she said. Naruto gave her an appraising look. A proposition? That was different. Oh, he asked, unconsciously tensing. Something about the air that Chao gave off put Naruto on edge. And what would that be, Chao-san? Do you need help with your assignments? Naruto humored her, hoping it was something so trivial. Chao smirked and closed her eyes in an aloof, all-knowing expression. Let's be honest with each other, Naruto-sensei. Neither of us are what we seem, she said. Now Naruto visibly tensed. He quickly thought of the kunai pouch attached to his leg. Excuse me? He asked. Chao chuckled. I mean this. I know that you are a ninja and an assassin. The words had barely left her mouth before Naruto had slammed her up against the wall with a kunai at her throat. All traces of the easygoing assistant were gone. In place were the cold, snarling eyes of an elite assassin. How do you know that? He growled, edging the knife forward. Chao did not seem at all fazed by the blade at her throat, and instead, her smirk deepened into a full smile. Ah, one step at a time, Naruto-sensei. I am not here to expose you, she said levelly. Naruto blinked in surprise, though his grip on the knife never slackened. I'll ask you again, how did you find out? He said, though now in a calmer tone. Chao simply chuckled. How I found out is of no importance, but like I said, I have a proposition for you, sensei, she said. Naruto stared hard at her. What? Maybe we could move somewhere more private, and without a blade at my throat, Chao said with a trace of bitter humor in her voice. Naruto stared at the girl for a moment longer before he released her, letting her slump to the deck. He motioned toward the hut door and both slipped quietly inside his hut. Inside, Naruto faced the girl, his expression no less cold. All right, talk. So Chao did. She explained her plans. How she was from the future, which, Naruto noted, explained her knowledge of him, and her overall goals. She told of the upcoming festival and the invasion plan. Naruto stood completely still, processing the information silently. What this girl was doing, was immense. Well, Naruto-sensei, will you join me? Chao asked. Though she was pleasant enough, Naruto held no doubt to what she would try if he refused. What you are doing, this will more than likely kill people. Naruto began, looking past Chao. These mages will die if they are discovered. People fear and hate what they do not understand. Chao nodded. Yes, I realize that. But for the good of the world, I am ready to take responsibility for that. Can you of all people judge me for spending lives for the greater good? She had him there. Naruto found himself agreeing with Chao more and more. What this girl was planning did not directly interfere with the elemental countries either. What's in it for me? He asked, rather bluntly. Chao smirked, as if expecting such a question. She seemed to predict everything. I am willing to pay you for your services, of course, she said. Also, the confusion would give you a better chance at taking out Kano. She said, though Naruto saw a hint of pain when she said the last part. She wasn't a heartless person, Naruto deduced, but was willing to face the pain of her tasks. Naruto respected that. And? I can give you spells, she finished. Now Naruto looked shocked. You can use magic? He asked in disbelief. Chao nodded, though her face showed a deep pain hidden. I can. And I am willing to give you knowledge as well, for your people, she said. Naruto bit his tongue. The offer was a good one, but still he hesitated. Chao must have read his pause because she said, I can give you some time to think it over. Meet me at the Mahora College labs in 2 days with your answer, she said. Naruto nodded, and without another word, Chao turned and headed to the door. Choose wisely, Naruto-sensei. She called back to him, and slipped out the front door. End flashback. I should accept, Naruto thought. The offer was really good, and it was giving him a better chance at his mission. But then why couldn't he bring himself to do it? You still have doubts about killing Kanoka, Kyuubi said. Naruto winced. It was the truth. Naruto was still hoping he would get a message back telling him to call off the whole thing. You should just accept it, brat. You're going to have to do it. It's your job and duty. Since when has killing innocents become part of my job? Naruto snapped. Kyuubi sighed deeply. Since it became necessary for the prosperity of your home. Kyuubi returned. Naruto sighed and nodded. That was right. He would do it for that. He began thinking of Chao and her cold certainty of her goals. She doesn't falter from her task, though daunting as it is. Learn from that, brat. Naruto would have responded, had he not been suddenly distracted by a suddenly puff of smoke appearing before him. Naruto jumped as the small fox Kaeru appeared from the haze. It was carrying a letter in its mouth. Naruto froze for a split second. It was the message he had been waiting for. Naruto dismissed his summon and opened the letter quickly. Fox, while recent information of your mission does bring a certain caution into play, the mission overall will still continue. I don't have to remind you of our economic state as of now, and we cannot afford to revoke this mission. Please continue as ordered. Sandame Hokage. Naruto sighed deeply as he read the letter. Well, that was it then. The mission would continue. Naruto crumpled up the letter and stuffed it into his pack with all his gear. He had placed a hinge over it so that if someone ever peeked inside, nothing would show. Naruto paced around his dorm room floor for a moment. This was it. All stops were gone and he couldn't put it off any longer. I must assassinate Konoha, he thought sullenly. A day passed. School life was continuing normally. Negi was training with Evangeline after classes. Naruto had never followed him, but the blonde-haired boy noted that Negi seemed to be returning home each day increasingly exhausted. What the hell is that girl doing to him? Hey, if it's Evangeline, then it's no surprise the boy is wearing down. That girl is a slave driver. Not to mention she probably sucks his blood. Wah? She's a vampire, remember? And if you look closely at Negi, he is more than just physically drained. Kyuubi explained. Naruto shuddered, thinking of Negi being preyed upon. Quickly he got ready for bed and switched off the lights. The next day, Naruto nearly wanted to slap himself from exasperation. Negi was teaching as best he could, but it looked like the poor boy could barely stand. All of the girls saw it as well, and there was concern written on all of their faces. When class ended, Negi stumbled out, barely able to hold himself upright as he walked down the hallway. Asuna stood at the classroom door, watching him go with a worried expression written plainly across her face. Naruto walked up beside her and watched as well. Just what is he doing with Evangeline? Asuna asked, though if it was to herself or him Naruto had no clue, he answered regardless. Training obviously. But damn, makes me curious, he said. Okay, that was half true. He also wanted to get closer to see Negi's training for scouting purposes. One thing plainly obvious about Negi was his loyalty and protective nature towards those he cared about. While that was something Naruto found admirable, it also made him a threat for Naruto's plans. He sensed more girls walking up behind him. It was Negi's usual group of friends: Konoha, Setsuna, Kufei, Yu, Nodoka and Asakura. I wonder what he is doing, Asakura said, startling Asuna. She and Naruto turned into the other girls. Each had a look of curiosity written on their faces. So, it's because of his training with Evangeline? Yu asked quietly. Naruto nodded. More than likely. He was staggering a lot during our morning practice too, Kufei added. Asuna frowned again, deep in thought. Just what is she doing to him? Asakura began to rub her shin thoughtfully, a mischievous beginning to form. Spending 2 to 3 hours a day with Eva-chan and then coming home worn out, do you think they could be doing that? She emphasized that, and blushed lightly. Naruto and the other girls blushed too as they got the meaning behind Asakura's words. Naruto shook his head and just before Asuna could shout a response said, I doubt it. He's only 10 after all. Thought this school has to be the easiest place in the world to get some, he thought with a small giggle. I mean damn, these girls are always looking for an excuse to strip. He had figured that when the girls played a few rounds of their strip study session during class, that was a good day. The group trailed Negi off campus to the town, where they saw Evangeline waiting. The two set off and the group trailed behind a ways off. Soon they were back in the woods, at Evangeline's cabin. They stared at it for a moment before Asuna spoke up. So are we going in or not? Naruto sighed ruefully. Truth be told, he had been hoping to avoid Evangeline for a while longer. The glares she gave him in class recently were getting tiresome. They went inside for some privacy. I told you, they're totally doing it, Asakura said, chuckling. Enough with that already. Geez, Asuna snapped at her, but Naruto noticed the worried, anxious look on her face. Oh ho ho. He mentally chuckled, as if discovering some deeply hidden secret. This girl was like an open book. Without waiting any longer, the group crept up to the door and hesitantly opened it. Kufei peered inside. It's empty, she said, glancing around. Now they all walked inside, looking around for any sign of Negi or Evangeline. There was none. It was as if the two had disappeared off the face of the planet. Suddenly Nodoka cried, Hey, down here. Everyone turned. somewhat surprised by the shy girl's outburst. Nodoka blushed quickly and pointed down the steps. There's a basement with something in it. As the girls headed down the stairs, Naruto paused suddenly, remembering. Today was the day he had to give Chao his answer. Naruto hung back until he was the only one left on the main floor. Glancing around quickly, he formed a familiar cross-hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Another copy of the blonde ninja appeared in a burst of smoke. The Naruto clone nodded to his original and headed back outside. Once there, he promptly disappeared, leaping through the trees back to campus. Satisfied, Naruto turned and headed down the basement steps. When he got to the bottom, he stopped in surprise. There was a single room with a large glass sphere situated in the middle. Inside was a miniature resort of some kind. But what Naruto noticed first was that all the girls had disappeared, save Asuna, who was glancing around wildly. Where did everyone go? She asked to the air. Naruto walked up with a frown. What happened? I don't know. They were all here a second ago and then there was a flash and she never finished. The bright light returned and engulfed Naruto and Asuna. Clone Naruto ran down the path as quickly as possible without attracting unwanted attention. It was raining now, and Naruto ran faster. He slowed a bit when he saw two figures a bit further ahead. It was Chizuru and Natsumi. Natsumi looked up in surprise as Naruto approached. Sensei, what are you doing out here? The girl asked. Naruto was about to respond when he noticed the dog at their feet. It was wounded from the looks of it, but there was something about the black canine that made Naruto edgy. Sensei, can you help us get him back to our dorm? Chizuru asked as she scooped the dog up in her arms. Naruto hesitated for a moment. He needed to go meet up with Chao. Sure, he said. Together the three of them managed to bring the wounded animal back to Chizuru and Natsumi's dorm without any trouble. Inside, Naruto set the dog out on the floor and watched as Chizuru began applying ointment. What do you think happened to it? Natsumi asked. Naruto had no clue and didn't care. He needed to go. If that's all, I need to get going, he said. I won't tell anyone about it being here either, so don't worry, he said as he headed for the door. Chizuru gave him a warm smile. Thanks, Sensei. Naruto waved as he opened the door and left. Almost as soon as he did, Natsumi turned back to the do and gasped in surprise. The dog was gone, and in place was a 10-year-old kid. He had black hair and two dog ears sticking out from the top of his head, and a tail. Wah, en negi, the boy muttered. Chizuru walked up with a look of mild surprise. Oh my. The boy mumbled again. Gotta tell him, danger, coming. Elsewhere, in the abandoned streets of Mahora, a figure began to form out of the rain. Two glowing eyes appeared, followed by a shadowy figure. It looked up at the leering academy. Negi Springfield, Asuna Kagurasaki, I finally found you. The original Naruto blinked rapidly as the world came back into focus. He gaped when it did. They were no longer in Evangeline's basement. Instead they stood on a circular tower, which jutted out from a large cylindrical resort. It was the resort from the model, Naruto realized with a start. What the hell? Asuna yelled as she looked around. She stood up next to Naruto with an amazed expression. Sensei, Asuna. Both looked to see you waving to them from the bridge. This way. See what we found. Asuna and Naruto joined her and they began heading towards the main resort buildings. So where are we exactly? Asuna asked you. The other girl didn't even blink. Somehow we are in the same resort as in the miniature model, she said calmly. Asuna sighed. I'm really trying not to be surprised by these things anymore, she said with exasperation. Naruto didn't, instead looking around carefully. It was a luxurious place, with a waterfall pouring down forever in the background. We looked around for 30 minutes before you arrived. You explained. Kufei was waving to them from the main pavilion. Naruto and Asuna paused. 30 minutes? Naruto asked. But you were only gone for, like, 2. Guys. Kufei called. I think we found them. Asuna, you, Naruto and Kufei crept down the stairs from the pavilion, leading to a large set of rooms underneath. Nodoka, Setsuna and Asakura were at the bottom of the stairs, hiding behind the entrance. There were voices from inside the room. You're at your limit already? Just hurry up and let it out. But Evangeline-san, call me master. All the girls were blushing heavily as they listened. Nodoka looked about ready to go into cardiac arrest. Naruto just smirked and edged closer to the door. Asuna finally reached her limit and jumped out into the open. Just what the hell are you doing to him, you little? She started but then stopped when she saw the scene. Negi and Evangeline were seated on a couch with Chachimaru standing quietly behind. Evangeline had her teeth sunk into Negi's arm, a look of annoyance on her face as she saw the intruders. Asuna face-faulted. What do you people want? Evangeline sat up and sweat dropped. Asuna jumped back and shouted. Just what are you doing? What does it look like? He's just letting me suck his blood as payment for his lessons. She got an evil look in her eyes. Why, what did you think we were doing? She asked suggestively. Oh, shut up. Clone Naruto arrived at the Mahora college and saw Chao standing out front. She turned to him with a smile that Naruto was becoming increasingly familiar with. Naruto-sensei, there you are, she said. Naruto nodded and glanced around. So about this offer. Have you given it some thought? She asked. Naruto nodded and looked at Chao with determination. She stared right back and Naruto was struck by the sheer amount of deception and intelligence that lay within them. I'll do it, he said. Chao's smile broadened. Excellent, now then, follow me. I want you to meet with your other business associates. Chao led him into the building. After following through staircases and hallways, they stopped at a set of double doors. Chao pushed them open and Naruto stared. There were mechanical marvels everywhere. Machines, robots and data charts littered the room with desks and computers set about in all directions. And there were two figures in the room waiting. It was Mana and Hokage. Now that struck Naruto as surprising. Okay, maybe he wasn't surprised by Mana being there, but Hokage? How did Chao sink her fangs into that one? They looked up at Chao's approach and nodded to her, but then their eyes landed on me. Naruto-sensei. Mana asked in confusion. What is he doing here? Hokage asked. Chao nodded at Naruto in a way of indication. Naruto-sensei has joined our cause, girls. His skills can be of great value to us, she said. Mana and Hokage looked even more surprised. Skills? Mana asked. And just what is that? The question was more directed at Naruto. The boy felt a slight air of hostility coming from the girl and smirked. Before either could blink he was behind them, a kunai in each hand, aimed at their throats. I'm more than I seem, girls, he said, enjoying the wide-eyed looks of the two students. Mana recovered first and whipped around. What the hell? She half screamed. I've only ever seen movements like that from Kaide-san. She's a kunoichi of great skill. How can this guy? Naruto-sensei is a shinobi. Chao cut in. A ninja like Kaide-san. Mana and Hokage looked at Naruto in awe as the boy smirked again. He mentally stored that bit about Kaide away for later. So are you going to start this or stand there staring at me all day? His voice broke the two girls out of their stare. Chao nodded. Yes. We're here to discuss your roles in the upcoming invasion, she said. She would have continued but Hokage cut her off. Hold on, I'm not done with him. She pointed at Naruto. What are you doing at Mahora in the first place? Naruto gave her a piercing glare that made the girl shrink from him. That is none of your concern, he said, voice cold as ice. Hokage made a small noise and backed off, feeling his aura of death. Mana frowned and studied Naruto, but said nothing. If I can continue, Keiho said with trace of annoyance. Your roles in the invasion, now then. A half hour later, clone Naruto left the building, walking at a slow pace. It was still raining, but the boy didn't seem to notice. Everything was coming together. He headed off the path into the woods. Clone Naruto glanced around quickly and then dispelled himself, leaving behind a faint wisp of smoke that was quickly washed away in the pouring rain. At Evangeline's resort, Naruto suddenly jerked up as his clone's memories came rushing to him. He absorbed the information quietly as Evangeline explained how the resort worked and its purpose. The plan was a go then. The invasion would happen in a couple weeks' time. Game on, Naruto thought. Naruto stared sullenly out at the night sky as he stood leaning on one of the pillars, holding up the main roof of Evangeline's resort. It was night now and everyone else, save for Negi, was asleep inside. In the morning they would be able to get back out of the resort, and for the entire day all the girls and Negi had been training hard. Well, actually, Negi was still training hard. Naruto glanced out the door to the main platform where Negi was running through katas that he had been practicing all day. Naruto shook his head in slight wonderment. The boy was tenacious. Footsteps from behind Naruto made him turn his attention from the red-haired mage. Naruto-sensei, Kyuubi said sleepily, rubbing at her eyes. She gave a small yawn, cocked her head to the side in a way that Naruto couldn't help but find cute. His eyes trailed downward, and a blush crept onto his face. While sleeping, Kyuubi's shirt had been tugged open a good bit, showing off a good bit of skin. What are you doing up, sensei? The dark-skinned girl asked. Naruto, recovering, held a finger to his lips and motioned away from the pavilion. Best not to wake up the others. He and Kyuubi walked quietly away from the group of sleeping girls and headed out into the night. Naruto leaned against the railing bordering the resort. So what are up for, Kyuubi-san? He asked. Kyuubi shrugged. I couldn't sleep, she said. What about you? Same. He replied. They settled into a comfortable silence, staring out into the night. Naruto had to admit, he was astounded that such a place like this resort could be created. It seemed too natural. His eyes drifted back to Kufei, and he began to observe the girl. They had become almost friends in the short time that Naruto had been at Mahora. Probably more so, if Naruto wasn't trying to keep emotional contact at a minimum. I'm already in deep enough as it is. Making bonds with civilians makes it harder to cut ties when the mission is complete. He reminded himself, but still, he did enjoy the girl's company. She had a rather quirky and fun personality, a lot like himself when away from missions. They both prided themselves in being strong. Hey, Kufei, he said suddenly. I was always wondering, why exactly do you want to be so strong? You mentioned that you have trained a long time, but why? Why would a Japanese schoolgirl need or want to be so strong? He asked. Kufei stared out into the night sky for a long moment, processing the question. For once, her expression was serious, something that caught Naruto a little by surprise. Well, I come from a clan of martial artists, you see, she said. All my life I have been taught to fight, that strength was everything. She turned and looked at Naruto, grinning. And I love it. Always have. And truth be told, I'm not much good at anything else. You've seen my grades, sensei. Being strong is all I've really got. Her grin turned sheepish. Naruto looked at her in surprise. Her answer, well, brought up memories. Flashback. Naruto stood in the middle of a training ground, panting heavily. The area around him was a wreck, littered with weapons and the after effects of jutsu cast. He stood and began running through more taijutsu moves, intent to keep practicing through the rest of the day, despite having trained for 8 hours already. It was beginning to take a toll on his 10-year-old body. Further off, Kakashi stood watching his student. He had long ago learned that Naruto was too stubborn to quit training when Kakashi told him to. The Junin was content to let the boy tire himself out, which he often did. Naruto, Kakashi called, making the boy pause. Kakashi snapped his book shut. Why do you train so hard? You have exceptional talent and your stamina is impressive. But why do you insist on running yourself into the ground? I've never seen you do anything besides eat ramen and train, he said. Naruto beamed, a grin that reminded Kakashi painfully of his late sensei. Sensei, I want to be strong, like you and Gigi-san. You can, and probably will be. But you do nothing else. Don't you have any other aspirations to live for? Kakashi asked. Naruto's grin melted into a frown. No, well, I mean. Everybody hates me for the stupid fox. All the villagers and their children avoid me. I can't play with anybody my own age, and everybody always kicks me out of places and treats me badly. And I have no real family. I want to be a strong ninja and serve this village because it lets me be something of importance. His grin returned, but it was smaller, sadder. Being strong is all I've got. Kakashi stared at the boy for a long moment. Finally he sighed. Naruto, I've decided to recommend you for Anbu. The tests are in 1 month, so be prepared, he said. Naruto cheered. Flashback end. Yudo-sensei. Hey, you alright? Kufei leaned in close, looking at him in confusion. Naruto shook his head to clear away the memory and smiled. I'm fine. Just thinking of something is all, he replied. Kufei nodded. They were both silent for a minute before Kufei spoke. Nay, sensei. Since you asked me, I get to ask too. Why do you know martial arts so well? You're as good as me, she asked. Because being strong is all I have going for me too, he said, giving a rather fox-like smile. Kufei tried to fight down a blush when she smiled at him, glancing away quickly. Thoughts were racing around the girl's head a mile a minute, most of which having to do with the blonde teacher standing with her. Ever since the beach trip, Kufei had been having conflicting thoughts about her sensei. He is pretty cute, but he's my teacher, that would never work. But that's never stopped the other girls from going after Negibozu. But I'm a Fei. My clan would only accept someone who has proven themselves stronger than me. And hasn't he already done that? Her internal argument continued, while outwardly the girl was beginning to turn quite red, a pretty amazing feat considering her dark skin. Naruto's sweat dropped as he watched the girl begin and shook his head. This girl really confused him sometimes. But then, so did most of the girls in Class 3A. Though he did admit, her blushing did look really cute. Naruto, what seemed like the millionth time that night, shook his head to clear his thoughts. This was not the time to be distracted. With the Mahora festival coming up and his new involvement, he had to be more focused than ever. And that meant not getting distracted by how sexy Kufei looked in that outfit, damn it. Admit that you like her so we can all just move on with our lives please. Geez, what happened to the calm level-headed Anbu thing? Kyuubi spoke up, making Naruto mentally groan. I don't have time for this. Hey, Kufei-san. It's still pretty late, we should probably get to bed, he said, bringing the girl out of her own mental drama. She glanced inside and nodded. Yeah, you're right, Uru. Together they crept back into the pavilion to grab some sleep before tomorrow came. But they paused once inside, finding no one actually sleeping anymore. Rather, the girls were gathered in a huddled group on the other side of the room, peering out onto the landing where Negi was. Naruto and Kufei walked up behind the group and glanced at each other in confusion. What's going on? Naruto asked, making all the girls jump. Naruto-sensei, don't scare us like that, Kanoka said softly, putting a hand over her chest. He shrugged in apology and looked past the girls. Negi and Asuna were leaning up against each other, foreheads pressed together and kneeling in the middle of a magic circle. What's going on, Uru? Kufei asked. This time Asakura answered. Maybe we should be asking you too that. What were you and Kufei doing alone, sensei? She asked, grinning suggestively. Naruto and Kufei turned red, the girl stuttering out a denial while Naruto just shook his head. Nothing like that, I assure you, he said. Asakura gave him a disbelieving look, and then turned back to peering over Nodoka's shoulder, at the book in her hands. All the girls were riveted to it, save Evangeline, who was staring at Naruto with an unreadable expression. We're looking at one of Sensei's memories that he's showing to Asuna, Yu said, finally answering Naruto's question. Would you like to see? Kufei nodded and joined the small group, but Naruto shook his head. No thanks, not any of my business, he said and turned, heading back to his spot in the pavilion. Wake me when we're ready to leave. As he began to settle into the small futon laid out on the floor, he felt eyes burning into him from behind. He turned to see Evangeline standing in the doorway, hands on her hips in a rather aggressive posture. Naruto sighed. Well, I knew you were gonna come after me sooner or later, huh? He said. Evangeline snorted. Damn right, Whiskers, she said. Naruto's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. Whiskers. Tell me what you did that day in my cabin. The small vampire demanded. That power was far beyond human capability. Naruto smirked. Maybe I'm just that powerful. Tell me why you feel like Kyuubi-sensei. Naruto froze where he stood, mind doubting what he had just heard. There was no way he had heard that right. He stared at the girl for a long moment, trying to process what she had just said. Kyuubi-sensei. Well, yes, actually. Kyuubi spoke up, sounding apologetic in his tone. I told you I knew of Evangeline. She was a pupil of mine, many years before I attacked Konoha. The demon explained. Naruto's eyes were wide with disbelief. But what? Why? I found Evangeline when she was newly made into a vampire, alone and bitter at the world. I may be a demon, but I'm a kitsune and we care for our young. I wasn't going to let some young defenseless creature be killed by hate-filled humans. So I took her in and taught her magic. A couple of years later we went separate ways. It's as simple as that. The demon said. Naruto sighed heavily and stared at Evangeline. You want to know how I know Kyuubi? He asked. Hearing the name out loud made Evangeline's pulse quicken with excitement. Yes. That power I felt was Demon Yukai, my masters. How did you acquire it? Naruto looked out at the huddled girls, peering in on Negi's memories and then back at the waiting girl. He wasn't exactly sure how much he could share with this girl. On the one hand she had shown little interest in Naruto as a threat, yet on the other she was Negi's teacher. You can tell her, Naruto. Evangeline knows when to withhold information. Kyuubi offered. Naruto nodded. Alright Evangeline-san. I will tell you, and so he did. Naruto spent the rest of the night explaining his position as a Jinchuriki, his life growing up and the pain and abuse that came with it. At that, Evangeline's eyes became almost nostalgic, lost in memory of some horrible past. Naruto made sure to avoid any parts about Konoha or Shinobi specifically. At the end, Evangeline said, So my master is sealed inside of you then. I must admit I'm impressed. It takes a great deal of power and skill to seal a demon lord. But still, there's more to you than what you're telling. She said, scanning him leveling. Finally she turned away. I won't pry, it's not my business, but if you have Kyuubi-sensei's influence, then I'll be watching you very closely. And with that, the vampire disappeared deeper into her villa, leaving Naruto alone. He spent the next 10 minutes trying to make sense of the revelation about Kyuubi and Evangeline, finally deciding that it really didn't matter. Evangeline doesn't need me anymore. She is a creature of the night through and through. But I am proud to see that she has come so far. The demon in question said, a hint of pride in his voice. Naruto smiled faintly. I noticed that she seemed a little less tense when she left. Yes. That's probably the closest thing to happy that Evangeline will get. The next morning, the 3A group was finally allowed to leave Evangeline's resort. Naruto was the first one out of the cabin, and noted that it was still raining. It was still the same day that they had gone into the resort. Good, he thought with a nod. At least he hadn't lost any time. The group rushed through the rain to the middle school buildings and went their separate ways. Asuna, Negi and Kanoka headed off to their room, while Kufei, Asakura, Yu and Nodoka all headed for the bathhouse. Naruto stopped by his room first, changing into some lighter clothes and grabbed a towel. He could plan later, right now he needed a decent bath. The bath was empty when he arrived. Naruto quickly stripped and dived in, enjoying the warm water completely. "Oh, this is even better than the hot springs back home," he muttered, leaning against the side and submerging himself up to his chin. He closed his eyes and mentally reviewed the day. Well, days, actually. His clone had given its report on Chao's plan and dispersed a while ago, but only now could Naruto really focus on the task ahead. He was supposed to wait until the festival to make any moves. More to the point, the tournament. Apparently there would be quite a few stronger people fighting there. It was a good chance to strike. Everyone would be distracted by the festival and tournament to notice him. But he would most likely have to enter himself in the tournament itself to get close. He could always drop out early. Yes, that would be a good course of action. That way he had an excuse for sneaking around non-public areas of the arena. Suddenly the sound of a door opening made Naruto freeze. The bathhouse door was open and figures began to walk into the bath. Distinctly feminine figures. It was a group of the 3A class, with Haruna at the head, wearing nothing but a towel. Naruto quickly slid underwater, trying to hold in his oncoming nosebleed as he looked around frantically. How the hell was he supposed to escape with all these girls crowded in here? Finally he swung over behind a large plant and quickly hanged himself into a smaller plant. He mentally sighed in relief. Until the girls threw off their towels and got into the water. Oh god. Naruto thought. This is bad, I can't get caught in here with Hey. Yuna's got a pretty good figure, no. Bad Naruto. No bad thoughts right now. He could hear Kyuubi snickering in his mind, but Shut It Hard Part was trying to concentrate on escaping, but the perverted side of him kept dragging his eyes back to the bathing girls. And I thought there were some beautiful girls back in Konoha. These girls put all of those to shame, he thought. Then his eyes landed on the naked form of Kufei. His mind went blank. When had she gotten here? More importantly, why couldn't he look away? Naruto drank in the sight of the girl as she playfully bathed with the others, talking about some new skin product that Yuna had just bought. Damn, she was beautiful the way her dark skin seemed to glow in water. Earth to Naruto. Kyuubi shattered the moment, making Naruto almost lose control of his disguise. He glanced at Kufei again and then managed to drag himself away. It was strange. Jiraiya had taken him peeping before at bathhouses, but Naruto had never really felt much for it. Sure, he enjoyed looking at a girl as much as the next guy, but there was something different about it when he saw Kufei. My god, Gaki, just admit that you have feelings for the girl already. So what if I do? Okay fine, you're right, I like Kufei a lot. She's a great person, funny, strong, cute, and happy. But I can't afford to be attached to anyone here, in case you've forgotten, you stupid fox. It came out harsher than Naruto meant it to, but he was irritated. He really did like Kufei, in a way that he was still trying to figure out. None of it mattered though. In a month's time he probably not Nevin still be in Japan. You're just running away from it, Kyuubi said quietly. What? You're hiding behind this mission excuse. You're afraid to become attached to anyone, because you think they will hate you once they learn about me. Naruto found himself unable to find a comeback. That hit close to home. He had never considered it consciously, but the fox was right. The only people he ever got close to were his senseis and the Hokage. He hated his childhood, hated being looked down upon. And, he would admit it, afraid of attaching himself to anyone who might betray him. Well, fine. Fuck it, you're right. Happy? He asked, but Kyuubi was silent, making the blonde Anbu launch into a tirade of swears. He was so distracted, he almost missed the cries of alarm from the girls in the bath. A small whirlpool had appeared in the center of the bath, and was pulling some of the girls down into it. What the hell? He muttered. The room had gone foggy, so it was hard to see, but Asakura, Kufei, Nodoka and Yu were definitely gone. Swearing, Naruto undid the hinge and dove into the whirlpool, and was quickly pulled under. Naruto blinked, trying to clear the water from his eyes, as he sat up. Naruto-sensei. He heard Asakura ask in confusion. He blinked again and everything came into focus. He was sitting in a large bubble, surrounded by Yu, Nodoka, Asakura, Kufei, Setsuna and Kanoka. What are you doing here? Kanoka asked. Naruto then noticed that most of the girls were, well, less than modestly clothed, having been ambushed in the bath. He coughed, turning red and averted his eyes. Realizing their position, the girls did the same. Luckily for Naruto, he was still wearing his towel wrapped around his waist. Well, I was kinda taking a bath and fell asleep," he said, laughing sheepishly. Yu sighed in exasperation while Asakura and Kufei chuckled. "Does that mean you were in the bath with us, sensei?" Asakura sked. Naruto stuttered out an affirmative, making the girl's grin widen. She would have said something if Asuna hadn't interrupted. "Will you all shut up? Where the heck are we?" Naruto looked outside their apparent prison and saw the auburn-haired girl tied and hanging up in front of the Mahora outdoor auditorium. Naruto frowned. What the hell was going on? "Well, it looks like all of my bait has woken up." The man wore a long black trench coat and hide-brimmed hat. From what Naruto could tell, he looked to be around 40 years old, with long gray hair that curled out from under a black wide-brimmed hat. He was tall, very tall, and gave off a very troubling vibe. Naruto frowned. It was familiar. "It's useless to try and escape. You won't get out of our special water prison without some pretty strong magic." A small girl hovered up in front of the bubble containing Negi and the 4 girls. "Just be happy we didn't melt you down and eat instead." There was a small, evil grin on the creature's face that made Naruto shiver slightly. Just what the hell were these people? "What do you want with us?" Asuna practically screamed at the man. She seemed more angry than anything else. Of course, she was tied up in some very sexy lingerie. Naruto had to fight off a minor nosebleed. Again. It wasn't easy being surrounded by 4 scantily clad girls, one of which he, as hesitant as he was to admit it, had feelings for. Their captor chuckled. "Please, allow me to introduce myself. I am Wilhelm Joseph von Herman. I've brought you all here, Negi's companions, to attract Negi." "Rather simple," he said with a shrug. And then he looked at Naruto with a small frown. "Though I didn't plan on you. Who are you exactly?" he asked. Naruto shrugged. "Just an assistant teacher," he said. "Indeed? Well, I suppose it doesn't hurt to have one more captive," Herman said. "But as I was saying, I've invited all 8 of you here." He looked away from Naruto further down the stage, where Setsuna hung from a smaller, personal bubble. The bubbles, Naruto surmised, were created by the 3 small water girls that floated around his prison. "I had to keep the exorcist separate, or she would cause quite a bit of trouble. And as for the other one, well, she simply got caught up in earlier events," he said. Naruto glanced away from Setsuna to the other side of the stage where Chizuru hung suspended and unconscious, same as Setsuna. "So, you captured us to force Negi to fight?" Naruto asked. The man nodded. "Of sorts, yes. Truthfully, our assignment is reconnaissance, to see how much of a threat Negi and Asuna-san will pose to us in the future," he said. Asuna blinked in surprise. Me?" she asked. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Suddenly Herman turned and stared off into the sky, away from them. "It seems they have arrived. I really am looking forward to seeing how much Negi has progressed from all those years ago." Naruto scanned the circular bubble, trying to think of a way out. He couldn't do anything without revealing any of his power, and that would compromise him. He mentally swore. "I'll have to leave this one up to you, Negi." Negi sped towards the stadium on his staff, the dog Han Yukitarao holding on tightly behind him. "I see them," Negi yelled over the wind, pointing down. He raised an arm towards the stadium and began chanting. "Ros Telma Scir Magister, Sagitta Magica, 17 wind spirits, capture thine enemy." The magic came forth, shooting at Wilhelm. The man made no move to dodge as the missiles flew at him. When the attack closed in, it suddenly and unexpectedly exploded in front of the man, leaving him unharmed. "Damn, a barrier?" Kitarao muttered as he and Negi landed on the stadium steps. Negi shook his head, frowning. "No, something else. It's like he cancelled it out," he said as the 2 boys walked down the steps toward the stage. "Hey mister," Negi yelled. "We came like you asked, now give back my students." Asuna, for a reason she couldn't quite understand, felt suddenly relieved when the red-haired teacher appeared. "Negi." Negi paused and glanced at the prisoners. "Why are you doing this?" he asked their kidnapper, and then his eyes finally registered what exactly, or lack thereof, Asuna was wearing. "And why are you doing perverted stuff to Asuna?" he all but shouted, trying to cover a blush. Asuna gave a short cry of dismay. "Just get us out, Baka," she yelled angrily. Behind her, all the other girls trapped in the large bubble prison pressed themselves up against the side. "Hey, Negi-kun," Kanoka called. "Get us out of here." Negi nodded and then blinked in confusion when he saw Naruto. Naruto-san. Why are you in there with my students?" he asked. The other girls glanced at him. Yes, that was something they wanted to know too. Naruto saw a dangerous gleam in their eyes. He inwardly shuddered, but outwardly shrugged calmly. Long story, and I don't think now is the time for it, he muttered. Negi nodded and looked back at their host. Naruto frowned. Who was that black-haired kid with Negi? Naruto had never seen him around Mahora before now. I sense Ukai coming from that one. A dog demon, or a Hanyu. Kyuubi said in Naruto's mind. Naruto's eyes widened a fraction. Demons? Here? Hey, that kid's from Kyoto. Yu said with a calculating frown. Naruto glanced at her. Kyoto? He'd been hearing references to it before, but never actually found out what they were talking about. You all know that kid? Naruto asked. Yu nodded. More or less. She answered in her typically clipped fashion. Beside her, Nodoka was giving worried looks at the duo confronting their kidnapper. Katarao-kun. She said softly. Naruto looked back at the dog boy again. Katarao, huh? Well, great. Another unknown. I apologize for doing such rude things to your class, Negi. Their captor said politely. A little too politely given the situation. But if I don't hold a few hostages, you won't fight at your full potential, will you? He asked with a predatory grin. Naruto's frown deepened. This man had kidnapped them for the simple sake of fighting Negi? Why? Sure, the guy was a mage, and apparently a very talented one. But why would anyone capture them simply to force Negi to fight them? I want to know your abilities, Negi-kun. The man explained. Defeat me and you may have them back. Those are the conditions I laid down. Negi gulped, staring at the man intensely. Damn, because of this, my students got involved. I have to rescue them no matter what. The boy mage thought, slipping into a Kenpo stance. Right. I'll go first. Katarao, stand down, he said. Katarao looked at him in surprise. What are you talking about, Negi? There's no way you can win by yourself, you're just a mage. Just let me handle this, the Hanyu said furiously. What are you talking about? You were just defeated by that guy. Negi argued back, both boys now completely ignoring everything else. I could have won easily if I could summon my spirit wolves. Well, you don't have them now, besides, I did beat you before, so I'm obviously stronger. You ambushed me. There's no way you'd win if it happened again. I don't care, just get out of my way. Without your wolf spirits you're nothing, so just let me do it. You ass. Let's end this here and now. Naruto resisted the urge to bang his head against the wall of his prison, settling for a groan instead. Honestly, were they really going to fight each other here? Hey, are you two going to help us or not? Asuna screamed the two boys. Herman sighed. Honestly, being energetic is good, but don't you think you two should be working together? He asked, and as if on cue, his three girl minions jumped in to attack the boys. Both boys, caught by surprise, were sent flying back by powerful kicks from the three girls. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Stronger than they look. Naruto. Kyuubi spoke up. I've been getting a strange aura from that man, there. He's hiding something about himself. The demon warned. Any idea what it is? Naruto mentally questioned. The demon hummed thoughtfully. It feels almost like, wait, that's it. Kyuubi's tone turned more serious. That man, he's a demon. Naruto's eyes widened. A demon? He stared at their captor, who was gazing curiously at Negi and Katarao, both of which were holding their own against the three slime minions. Naruto was drawn back to the fight, watching Negi almost dancing around his opponent in a flurry of Kenpo moves. Naruto gave a small grunt of approval. The kid was a fast learner, and pretty talented at that. But the blonde couldn't help but think that might cause problems for him later on. Suddenly Negi gathered magic into his arms and sent his opponent flying with a double palm strike. The slime girl shrieked and went flying. Not bad. The slime muttered and landed heavily. Negi and Katarao stood back to back, fists raised. Hey Negi, what was that? Katarao asked curiously. Oh, that was my supplemental magic, battle hymn, Negi said. No, I mean those moves you were using, the martial arts. Oh, it's Chinese martial arts that I'm learning. Negi began but Katarao cut him off with a laugh. Chinese martial arts, huh? That's nice. The boy laughed with a tone that could only belong to one who loved and lived for battle. Both boys leapt at their attackers, catching the three slimes off guard and sending them launching backwards. With a triumphant grin, the two boys charged at the Baron. The man didn't even budge, regarding them with a small hum of amusement. Remember, Katarao grunted. The range is 2.8 meters. Don't screw it up. Got it. Negi replied. Once again the three slimes attacked, but this time, Negi dodged around them, continuing for the Baron. The slime girls made to catch him, but Kotarou grinned and blocked the slimes. You guys are pretty persistent, but your opponent is me. Two cage bushnins of the boy appeared and joined the attack, effectively blocking the slimes. Negi took the opening, pointing his small practice wand at the Baron and firing off a single Sagitta Magica arrow. Herman raised an arm and cancelled out the attack with an almost bored expression on his face. Interesting, he didn't even chant the spell. Negi wasted no time on being surprised, instead slipping under the Baron's raised hand in a fluid motion, appearing behind the man. A small bottle was in his hand, raised at Herman like a weapon. What is that, I wonder? Naruto mused. It is a device used to seal demons. Quite rare, those. We've won. Negi declared. Demon sealing bottle. Light sprang from the opening of the bottle, and wind rushed from within, trying to suck the man inside. Asuna let out a confused, huh, as the pendant around her neck began to glow. She screamed as magic coursed over her body. Asuna-san? Negi asked in confusion. The bottle in his hand began to glow brightly, and then dropped to the floor, utterly silent, and utterly useless. What? Kotaro was the first to vocalize surprise. Naruto stared hard at the bottle. What had happened? It was working fine a minute ago. He stopped the sealing spell? Negi asked, said incredulously. Herman smirked. Well, it seems the experiment was a success. His eyes drifted to Asuna, who was hanging from her bonds, panting heavily. It works completely against magical attacks. He regarded Negi for a moment. I suppose it's time I got serious. Negi and Kotaro tensed. I've set up a barrier around this place. If we go all out, no one will see or hear us. With that said, the man struck. Even Naruto was slightly surprised by the speed. Demon Fist. A beam of magic shot from his fist, sending both boys flying. Kotaro landed on his feet, grinning. You'll have to do better than that, old man. Herman glanced away as a series of magical arrows struck at him, glancing harmlessly away as they were cancelled. Negi and Kotaro paused, assessing the enemy. We can't seal him away, we're just gonna have to go all out, said Negi. Damn, if that's what it takes. Negi launched into an incantation, and then suddenly ducked out of the way as Kotaro lunged forward, launching an attack. Inagami Ryuku Ga. Just as he fired, Negi fired his own spell. The two attacks struck at Herman, and did nothing. Asuna shrieked as the pendant on her once again glowed, sending shockwaves of magic over the girl. Asuna-san. Negi cried. Damn, it was nullified again. Kotaro spat. Magic neutralization. Herman murmured, as the smoke from the two attacks cleared away. Known as the ability to completely nullify magic. I wonder. How is it that a normal girl like Kagarazaka Asuna here to have such an ability? It is both extremely rare and dangerous. Naruto regarded Asuna with a surprised look. This girl had such a power like magic nullification? She had always seemed to be the most normal of the group, not to mention the fact that none of these girls should have had any power at all. I have severely underestimated the power of these mages and their companions. Negi was looking at Asuna, something finally clicking in his mind. Kamo-kun, he began. Yeah. The Ermin responded. Could it be that Ansan's power wasn't because of the contract, but innate? Asuna-san, are you alright? Negi called out worriedly. If it was natural for her, just what was this fight doing to her? Asuna grinned weakly. I'm fine, Negi. Kick this old man's ass for me. While this happened, Kamo stared at the pendant around the captive girl's neck. An idea came to him, and the ermine jumped off Negi's shoulder. I'll be back, Aniki. I have an idea. Negi glanced at the rodent and nodded, turning his attention back to Herman. The man settled into a fighter's stance. Well, Negi, since projectile fighting won't work, then let's settle this with our fists. Negi and Kotaro barely dodged out of the way as their opponent punched with lightning speeds, destroying the bleachers behind the boys. Negi glanced over at all of the captured students. He was rewarded with a solid punch to the face, courtesy of Herman. Naruto watched the fight with growing anxiousness. He needed to get out of this prison. Help somehow. He glanced at Asuna, and noticed Kamo sneaking close to the girl. Ansan, the ermine whispered. Kamo, let me get that pendant off you. If that's gone then. He got no further as he was promptly snatched up by one of the slimes who was guarding the prisoners. Naruto groaned. Well, there went that escape option. Kamo, you idiot. Asuna added her and secretly Naruto's opinion. In you go. The slime girl tossed Kamo into the bubble prison along with Naruto and the others. All three slimes sat outside the cage, watching the fight. They're not gonna make it. Quite a pity, one commented. What are you saying? Yui asked. Oh, don't worry about yourselves. You're just the bait. Our orders were to disable Negi from combat for a while, regardless of our research. But really, Wilhelm's petrification powers are awesome. Another said. Hey, if something goes wrong, they might get their limbs permanently petrified, she said matter-of-factly, while the captured girls stared, horrified. Wilhelm let loose a barrage of attacks, mercilessly beating on the two boys. Naruto winced. It truly did look like the two were going to lose. This Herman man was vicious. Negi and Kotaro were sent crashing painfully into the bleachers. Wilhelm walked slowly towards the two, his face holding disappointment. Well, is this it? He asked. Those attacks of yours are powerful, Negi-kun. But they have yet to even slow me down. Negi gritted his teeth. Are you alright, Kotaro? I can still fight. Then let's go. Both boys launched themselves at the man again. Or maybe, Herman continued, parrying the attacks with ease. It looks like, he swung a vicious right hook, catching Kotaro across the face. The Hanyu was sent flying across the stadium, crashing into the other side. Perhaps, you're not giving this your all? Herman scornfully said. Negi blinked. Oh, of course I am, he cried. I'm giving this my best. Herman cocked his head. Oh, really, Peef? I had heard that the son of the Thousand Master was supposed to be a strong adversary. But compared to that man, you're nothing. The complete opposite. Naruto was drawn from the fight as he saw that the girls were huddled together. He quickly scooted over to them. What are you doing? I have an idea. Kanoka replied, revealing a small training wand. If we can all focus whatever magic we have into this, we might be able to break out of here. Naruto nodded. It sounded good. Heck, anything sounded good at this point. He and the girls leaned in and focused. Kyuubi had said it was possible for him to use magic, so he really hoped this would work. What do you fight for, Negi? Wilhelm asked. Negi considered it for a moment. What? I fight for? Yeah. Look at Kotaro. He fights simply because he loves fighting. And you? You fight for your companions? Ridiculous. You disappoint me. A person's reason for fighting is always for himself, no exception. Hatred, anger and vengeance are the most common reason. Or like Kotaro, fight simply because it proves to yourself that you are strong. I don't fight for self-satisfaction, Negi retorted. I fight because. Because of guilt? Herman offered. Because of the guilt you feel when you get mortals involved in your affairs? He shook his head. No, even that sense of responsibility could never motivate you to fight, Negi-kun. He seemed to almost be playing with the boy. Or, he narrowed his eyes. Could it be that you simply wish to run away from those memories of that snowy night? Negi paled. How do you know about? He shook his head. No, that's not true. Is that so? Herman taunted. Well then, he slowly reached up and removed his hat. Asuna stared at the man in confusion. From his spot, Naruto's concentration broke, as he suddenly felt a shark spike of Yukai. He stared across the stadium. Wilhelm's features had changed completely. Gone was any trace of humanity from that face. Instead, the man's head was black and featureless. Save for a gaping maw for a mouth, and two haunting eyes. A pair of jagged horns jutted out from either side of the man's head. He could only be described as one thing. He could only be a demon. Well, Negi. How about now? Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.